bottom level, leveling it. Therefore, they no longer have some kind of advantage over us, like crisis actors, the psyop entertainment complex in general. Those wizards behind these perception management stunts, they can't trigger us. They don't have that kind of power anymore. All right, let me continue here. Appreciate everybody joining. Again, joining at ips.monster. Join for a year. Get 50% off with that link. We are unstoppable, and I am going to get sued. There's going to be years of legal back and forth from a few different directions. I'm suing YouTube. In fact, I've been contacted by I actually contacted the Attorney General's office there in California. Look, it's going somewhere. YouTube is a future defendant in a case where basically they're responsible for aiding and abetting in identity theft against me. And that's going to take some time here, but you're going to see in the future, especially starting next month. I don't let it overwhelm me, but this channel's always been contested. We've always had our beefs, we've always had our trolls, our enemies, and it has taken a lot of legal work to keep this thing going. But we are the channel that unmasked this Q psyop deeper than anybody, and that has yet to reach mainstream. And that's why I think it's great news that I'm likely going to be hit with a massive liability, because it's newsworthy. And anything that gets Infinite Plane Society on the news is going to help with our bigger agenda here, which of course is this, what is it? You want to call it a revolution of the mind. In a way, we're talking about this process of removing that filter. And when I say removing that filter, I mean it's like, think about the significance of people who were formerly 100% gate kept on this topic, learning about crisis actors. Before you knew about fake news, you were only stuck with the alternative explanation of the false flag theory. Like, every one of these terrible things is exactly happening as reported, although we have a different interpretation on who did it or why. But the essential thing is, it still happened. Like, we lived in a much darker world, very nightmarish, until we unplugged. And it was that little crack in the matrix, that little glitch that showed us, okay, this much is fake. Like, that's a pretty big deal. It's a paradigm shift. And I think that we can widen that rift. We can actually show more behind the scene than just faked shootings to advance various psyops. I mean political agendas. These psyops are more than just advancing wars. I say perception management operations, because it's more extensive than things merely involving violence. And we talk about these things all the time, but they're so pervasive, it's worth mentioning that psychological operations are the rule, not the exception. The Jussie Smollett scandal was intentional and revealed intentionally to give you the impression that if anybody ever tried to fake out the news media, they would expose it and humiliate the person. No, that was actually, it's a psyop within a psyop. It's what you'd call fake. Angst G says, if you're hit with a judgment, is that something you can appeal? We'll see. The way I'm looking at it is, it was a countersuit, and I think it was nothing more than malicious prosecution. And I think the basis for suing me was very fraudulent, in that there's a public domain piece of crap clip art which you could download for free and put on a business card, and it's a scientist. Well, I put a beak on it. Like, literally, I put the penguin beak on that scientist. And I think he thinks he's clever. What this defendant did, because I was suing him at the time for defamation, for emailing advertisers, etc. Well, he registered it with the USPTO, and he said, no, I'm going to trademark this public domain clip art. I mean, that would be like trademarking an emoji. And he's like, okay, now you committed trademark libel. And then he sued me for $640,000. I'm like, okay, I mean, actually, it's 600,000, but then 30,000 for his attorney fees, 12,000 for butt hurt. Feelings. Like, okay, show me the receipts where you went to the feelings doctor and he fixed your feelings. He patched them up. He massaged them or whatever. It's clearly a joke, but my point is, I told the judge this is malicious prosecution. It's retaliation, and if you succeed at something like that, it looks bad. I think it just looks bad on the judge. But look, I'm not worried about it in the slightest. It's not going to stop me. What it's going to do, it's going to platform us. And I say us, this think tank. They don't want to shine a spotlight on me because I am ground zero for an infodemic. Yep, I'm like patient zero for an infodemic that they won't be able to push back. And what I'm assembling right now is a can of worms, got some accelerant, and I'm ready for any kind of blowback for whatever kind of bad press I get. And I'm assuming it's going to be bad press. I'm going to be looked at as a bad guy because his evidence against me consisted of about 90 pages of blog posts and memes and statements like, oh, he's a flat earther. Like, am I a flat earther? I'm sorry, but are you even a globe earther? Show me the curve. Like, I'm shape agnostic. Show me what's at the edge of the universe. I mean, don't act like you have all the answers. We're asking the same questions, but our questions are a little more localized than assuming the answer is way out there instead of much closer. And this conversation is more nuanced than flat or round. To say someone is a quote flat earther, I'm sorry, but like establish that you're a globe earther first. I'm an earther. That's it. I'm an earther. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm on. But beyond that, yeah, I'm not really obliged to commit. And it's a very important question because it opens up a lot of things. And I think that it's a gateway to other very important questions, not a gateway to hate. It doesn't go from, oh, the earth might be flat, hail Hitler. That's what they want you to think. No, it's more like, okay, if they're misrepresenting it, then they're hiding land. Maybe they're hiding Atlantis. Or if they're not hiding land, they're hiding something else. Maybe they're hiding technology. But if they're hiding something, then it matters. And my position on this is it's far beyond about round or flat or shape. It's about world view control. I think NASA is about world view control. I think they fake more than space. I think NASA's behind a lot of psychological operations. Like that's just where they organize it all. That's the top of the capstone. I think NASA is is worldview warfare against everybody. It's not like you think about your military. Oh, it's to defend us from the other guys. No, it's to maintain the illusion of all these big threats. Like I admit it, I was a crisis actor, but I got paid well. I didn't stick around very long, but I think the entire time I was in the military, yeah, look, I was a crisis actor. My job was to perpetuate the belief in nukes, nuke fallout, and pandemics, and of course, all the remediation and decontamination techniques. And my entire job was premised on nuclear fallout, high altitude nuclear detonations, EMP blasts, and preparing for this as though it were eventual. Now, I'm just saying that the fact that everybody in all of the services believe, all of the armed services believe this. They believe in these particular things. They also believe in the official story of fill in the blank psyop. They're all de facto crisis actors. And we did do drills nonstop, simulating things nonstop. One of my jobs was helping to simulate depleted uranium rounds. And then, of course, you find vehicles hit with depleted uranium. You have to detect to see if it's radioactive. You wear the mask. I mean, look, PPE from 2020, if you ask me, I think that was all part of conditioning people to act as though the stuff were real, to make it real. Like a fashion statement was used to spread this big illusion. All right, continuing here. Look, I can admit that I was a crisis actor, but I didn't know it. But in 2020, I was a conscious crisis actor. I was a little miffed that I only got paid $1,200. All right, Wee says, makes sense. NASA would be the cover for the biggest black ops. Oh, yeah, look, I think you can draw a connection here between Kubrick, Apollo 11, 9/11, and the JFK assassination. And that's just a handful. And I'm saying it's the same production department. Okay, continuing. Lean Dion says their cartoon fake space doesn't account for their vast daily budget. Yeah, I would say that their money's going somewhere. It's not going into the production value. Like we're not getting Avatar 2. We're getting like something from PBS, like public broadcasting. It's pretty pathetic. I mean, look, the space station has to go down because it's an embarrassment, it's an eyesore, and the special effects are far behind video games. Netflix. I watched stuff on Netflix with that show. I think it's called Love and Robots and Death or something. Really great animation, animated series, short movies, and some of them are so real. It takes me a minute to realize, okay, this is fake. And I am visually literate. I can tell between real and fake, and that some of these take a minute. Okay, let's see here. I wanted to continue. Here's a couple of things. Now, I can make the case that 9/11 was a hoax in several ways, but I think with all of these things, one of the biggest clues here, I think, is of course the predictive programming that goes into it. We go back, we look at these different events, and you find out, we should have seen it coming. But at the time, we didn't know how it worked. Nobody at the time of 9/11 could have known the full extent of the hoaxery. But these days, we catch things in advance. But I've been looking back at psyops from years past just to see, who was unraveling it at the deepest level. And I found this really great article from peaceofmindful.com. And he broke down the Littleton shooting, Colorado, Klebold and Eric. Here we go. The Littleton shooters, the Columbine massacre. Now, a couple of things about this. One of the things he pointed out was what he called our spook markers. And by spook markers, he's talking about what we always point out, these strange numbers, the coincidences all over these things. He says, and this is his explanation, please do not confuse this mere signaling system with gematria, or translating words into numbers. I will be highlighting numbers I regard as significant or spook markers as I call them. This is merely secret communication devices by which intelligence agents, Freemasons or whatever, can tell the others these events are contrived and fake. For example, 1119 and 1208 are very significant here. Now, what he's pointing out is what we often point out, that you can find all kinds of numerical coincidences around these psyops. And I used to just say hoax code. You can leave it at that. You can find deeper levels of meaning, although I do agree with him to an extent that adding and subtracting the numbers and drawing conclusions based on that could just be a lot of misinformation. But this event, again, Eric Harris, Dylan Klebold. Dylan's where we get Dylan Roof from. They use these names that tie together. Anyway, this is a fantastic breakdown of the event and all of the hoaxery. Much of it was filmed in advance. Nobody died, nobody cried. And what's even more, this movie came out just after The Matrix came out. And if you recall, this movie, The Matrix, brought out that fashion of the black trench coats, the black shades, and the guns. Worth pointing out here that the glorification of gun violence in Hollywood is usually done by anti-gun types. Why is that? They're against guns, but they glorify them in movies. It's all gun porn. Why is that? It's because it's actually an anti-gun agenda. Their glorification of guns, their quote gun culture, is really a construct of the left. The right doesn't worship guns. That's mostly a construct that they give us in these movies to make it look like we have a toxic relationship with guns and we need to get rid of them. It's an exaggeration on purpose. But The Matrix played a big part in that. And if you recall, the shooters came out dressed up just like out of The Matrix. Here it goes. This is from peaceofmindful.com. It had just been released prior to the Columbine event. The image below is striking. On the right are the two actors chosen to play Klebold and Harris, only to build a body of evidence to insinuate that these were real people of a troubled nature. Yes, that's definitely a connection. Now, he does go through a lot of the numbers and the timestamps. And, for example, a 3-hour, 33-minute video from the cafeteria that day. And yeah, these are consistent markers throughout many of these events. Now, funnily enough, it seems that we might have an actual connection here or an answer as to who these two characters were, because again, these psyop actors, they're not really dying. It's not a false flag. The government didn't agitate these guys or provoke them. The FBI didn't give them guns and say, go shoot up a school. Uh, these were actors and they didn't die. Nobody died, nobody cried. Like, it's as simple as that. But I believe that a number of people have actually come to the same conclusion. We have an answer as to who they became or who they were known as afterward. And that would be Parker and Stone. Yes. Now you can compare the two. We're talking about the creators of South Park, Trey Parker, Matt Stone, and of course they do look like spitting images of the Columbine shooters. And you can just grab a couple images at random, and I've been going through them, and I think this stands. Trey Parker and Matt Stone are dead ringers for Klebold and Harris. Even the most recent pictures, very, very accurate. I think it's them. And there's another one as well. Let me point out another one that's related just to show you how consistent this pattern is. Do you remember Gabby Petito? Like this year, the character, the person who played Persephone was Eliza Fletcher, who was kidnapped. The year before that, it was Gabby Petito, kidnapped by Brian Laundrie. Gabby Petito happened to be in a 2013 music video for Sandy Hook, carrying a sign says here, "I'm irreplaceable." What are the odds from Sandy Hook to that? Going through comments, We says, "Why waste any black budget on special effects? The public's completely snowed by the crappy video." I have a few theories about this, and there's a strong possibility that the terrible special effects and the bad acting is there on purpose to gaslight you. Like when somebody's lying and you know they're lying, you can call them out. But if you don't, if you just have a suspicion, you can't really say anything. And I think maybe what they're trying to do is kind of create this subconscious suspicion it's fake, but not enough to quite call it out. Like everything just seems a little surreal. I think it's part of gaslighting, in other words. And gaslighting is the word of the year, Merriam-Webster dictionary, but it just describes a process of undermining somebody's sense of reality by getting them to question their own perceptions, but always having their perceptions contradicted by what you tell them to believe. Like it's probably on purpose. I have a lot to say on that topic. I mean, it's not a coincidence that you see the same faces appearing under different guises. I think it's, again, psychological warfare. Alex Jones seemed to have some kind of, I guess, remorse about having Ye and Nick Fuentes on his show, because Alex Jones is a guard railer in many ways, and he doesn't go full Hitler. He doesn't go full anti-Semite or anti-Jew. What he'll say is globalists. He uses dog whistles, and that's so they can stay on the air and not get, they really do toe the line. Well, Nick Fuentes goes out and says the quiet parts out loud, and so does Ye. Well, um, Alex Jones went on to Steven Crowder's show, and he said that Kanye West and Nick Fuentes have some kind of homoerotic asphyxiations with Hitler. That's where he went with it. He says, quote, "The real creep factor," this is from InfoWars, "the real creep factor is, man, homoerotic, I have to pay to read The Independent or these ads are going to overwhelm me." But before that, he had said to Ye that Ye has a Hitler fetish. But he was trying to deflect from Hitler. He said, "No, Ye, you're nothing like Hitler. You're not like him." And Ye's like, "No, I actually am. We need to stop dissing the Nazis. I mean, this story has been ongoing. I think they're not able to totally bury it, but listen to this. This is the damage control side of it. He says, "There's a real creepy factor with this Hitler stuff. It's like some homoerotic thing over Hitler. That's kind of what was going on there. There is a Hitler fetish. And I'm not into dudes in fancy peacock military uniforms, by the way." Some of the biggest, and then he goes on to say that Hitler was an occultist, Hitler was a baby killer. Anyway, we got to stop dissing the Nazis, said Ye. I've looked into it, and this did make me think. I did learn a little bit from it, and I've concluded that the argument for this Jewish media mafia control or whatever that Kanye is positing, I think it's just the far right version of the far left blaming white privilege and systemic racism for everything. I think these are equivalent partisan scapegoats, and they can't both be true, which makes me think they're both fake. Now, in the last week, things have shifted quite a bit. I think that when Fuentes and Ye went to meet with Trump and then got dumped on, I think they shifted things a bit. And now the expectations of the far right have been wedded for something a little more extreme. Here, this is from Vice.com. Ever since Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene disavowed white nationalist Nick Fuentes, the far right has viciously turned on her. Calling her Large Marge for some reason when she's like 5'2". They're dumping her. And I think they're going to dump Trump. I mean, they are pushing things over far to the right, but I have a theory about it. Like, I don't think this is merely Ye getting clicks. I don't think this is about merely the attention economy. If you look at the overall story here, you have Elon Musk opening the floodgates, independent. QAnon, white nationalists, hate speech. Experts reveal how the floodgates have opened. Okay, the floodgates have opened to what? Hate speech. Now, I've been talking about how Kanye West or Charles Ye Manson, how he's being set up. He is this Charles Manson-esque like character calling for the helter-skelter scenario. Well, here are the floodgates opening to enable this. If anything happens right now, who are they going to blame it on? Let's say some bowl cut pops off at a synagogue again, or something else. Ye's going to get blamed. Musk will get blamed. The Club Q shooting has already been blamed on the right. They've already blamed anybody on the right that said anything critical, anything having to do with grooming. If you criticize groomers, and I'm not talking about Catholic Church, I'm not talking about the Boy Scouts, I'm not talking about the Southern Baptists or the public school teachers. I'm talking about if you criticize the drag queens as groomers, you would be blamed for the Club Q shooting. And this scapegoating needs to stop. Blame the shooter. Blame his dad, actually. His dad was pretty bad, if you saw that. But I mean, if you ask me, it was all a big setup. And when it comes down to it, setups, I think Nick Fuentes is a Democrat plant. Same with Milo. All right, let me go through some comments. Diana South says Elon looks like Liberace. He does, actually, in that image there. Elon's a combination of Werner von Braun and I think, what is it, a Chinese clone, Willy Wonka, and Iron Man. He responded to Kanye's statement about how he could be a clone, and he said he found it to be quite a compliment. Kanye West is dragging far-right figures into the mainstream. Yep, as I said. Trump called for the termination of the Constitution because of Hunter Biden's laptop, and then it turned out to be a nothing burger as I predicted. I said it's basically an OnlyFans account for Hunter Biden, and his OnlyFans are the GOP. It's a nothing burger. And it turned out to be a nothing burger. You had all kinds of people on the right, like Jack Posobiec, saying this is the most historic Twitter info dump in history. And no, it was a nothing. Big nothing burger. Elon Musk says he wanted to punch Kanye for posting the Raelian symbol on Twitter. I actually have that audio. Do you want to hear Elon Musk talking about punching Kanye? Like, if this is like one of the least threatening sounding threats to punch somebody I've ever heard. Like, does he even know how to throw a punch?
That's not actually legal. So the question is, what is incitement to violence? And I think, posting swastikas in what is obviously not a, good way is an incitement to violence. I personally wanted to punch Kanye. So,
It's an incitement to violence. I personally want to punch Kanye. What?
good way is an incitement to violence. I personally wanted to punch Kanye. So,
Yeah, Kanye's being violent. Off with his head. Okay, okay, we can trust him with the with Twitter. Now, I'm gonna continue this tomorrow. We only got like 20% of the way through my notes. Like we're not even close. Not even. But I just wanted to make sure that we're kind of up to speed on where things are going. Things are going full speed ahead, not stopping. This is a quote from William Blake from The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. And this is with regard to what I've been saying about how the big deception has been this epistemological inversion. They have pulled people through the TV screen. They take it as a source of information. They have mistaken the screen for a window to the world when it is in fact a filter. This is William Blake, quote, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks in his cavern." And the chinks in the cavern refer to the cracks, the glitches in the matrix, the smiling crisis actor, the things that give you the insights. And that's what we have been working on here in this channel specifically. The glitches. And then it's from these glitches that we've been ascertaining the bigger picture. The big picture is basically the public has been left out of pretty much everything. We have an esoteric version of what's really going on. And what you're learning here, what we learn here, what we elucidate is what I would call esoteric media, the inside. What those people at the top of the pyramid scheme are apprised of. Anyway, thanks for joining, likely tomorrow morning, but definitely get on the text alerts. I'm going to keep that going. Thanks all of you for supporting the channel, and if you click the link below, you can join for 50% off for a year. And I'm going to reboot the 24/7 early in the morning. I have to set up a new playlist. This is Lucifer Tim, 33rd Degree. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hijack this stream. I know we're like 10 minutes early, but it's twice today we've been early, which is just an indication here that if you get the text alerts, you won't miss anything. And today is still December the 1st, 2022, and I had a special request by voicemail. Let me go ahead and get to this right away while it's still December the 1st, 2022. It's been a very interesting day. Let me go ahead and, is this even a voicemail or just a transcript? This might just be a very long text. It says, "Hello, I hope this is the right number. My husband loves your podcast. His birthday is December the 1st. I'm hoping you can do a shout out to Mario. He's turning 33. Okay. Well, happy birthday to Mario 33. In fact, we were just opening up with the 33rd Degree by Lucifer Tim. I'll be right back here, and I'm going to see if I can get the audio for that. Or it might just be a really long text, which is really pretty thoughtful. It's like 5 paragraphs. A little suddenly, as I looked askance at this door in front of me, yes, there was a black lady stating it to be the Supreme Court of the 33rd Degree. 35th Degree. text message. All right, so today started off with they're calling him the triumvirate of hate. I would have gone with trifecta, but I guess whatever. It's Kanye, Musk, and Trump are the three villains, arch villains. But right now, Kanye's taken center stage, and then he just merged with Alex Jones. And I'm still evaluating the fallout from the Alex Jones, Kanye, Nick Fuentes collab today. It was immediately apparent that Jones did not want to be branded as a Nazi, and whenever he brought it up, though, Kanye got weirdly defensive of Hitler, to the point where by hour three, Jones said to Kanye, "You've got a Hitler fetish." But it would go like this. He would say, "Well, Kanye, of course you've said some bad things, but it's not like you're Hitler." And Kanye's like, "Well, we gotta stop dissing Nazis. What's so bad about Hitler?" And there's really no way to water that message down, and it's kind of percolated. It's blowing up as we speak. And I just want to point out that this is very consistent with this helter skelter 2022 mind map that I was assembling. And one of the connections I didn't get to earlier when I talked about this is how recently Ye took credit for Django Unchained. He said Jamie Foxx and Quentin Tarantino stole it from him. But my point is, Django Unchained is an interesting part of this narrative because it has everything to do with Christopher Dorner, the police officer protesting systemic racism, going on a shooting spree. Of course, he's black, and we got people on CNN cheering it on, saying this is just like the movie Django Unchained about this escaped slave. Anyway, Christopher Dorner was quite literally incinerated in a cabin. And pop quiz: how old was Christopher Dorner when he was incinerated in that cabin? And again, there's a little hint here when it comes to pop quizzes. The answer is generally going to be, well, 33, and it's just the pattern. Ex-LAPD officer Christopher Jordan Dorner, 33, suspected in shootings of 5 police officers. The Dorner manhunt. I think it was it Lamont? Is that the guy's name? He was like, Christopher Lamont, he's like, this is Django Unchained in real life. They were literally cheering this on. But yes, here you have him. Columbia professor Mark Lamont Hill sat on a CNN panel to discuss Christopher Dorner and its quote, a real life Django Unchained. But anyway, what you had here was a meltdown in public, and then he gets burned, like burned at the stake, incinerated. I think they identified him from his passport, probably made from the same ones that the terrorists carry. Anyway, my point is they were sympathizers with him, and we've gone through this topic before. The clip of Mark Lamont is pretty funny. I mean, funny, not funny. Knowing how fake it all is, it's kind of funny. But yeah, you just open a worship of this. But I'm saying this is another example of what we would call concurrent programming. The things that are happening in real life happen to correspond to something that's happening in the movies. And it was interesting that Ye would attach himself to that messaging because I think it's about Nat Turner, which of course is where you get the name Turner Diaries. Turner Diaries, of course, inspired Timothy McVeigh and all these skinheads and the KKK types. And of course, Kanye comes out weirdly as Black Skinhead, which is one of his songs, and I think is something of a prophecy or foreshadowing about what he's doing right now. I mean, it's a very interesting and singular thing he's doing. The way he's just kind of taken control of this particular narrative and he's ran with it. And then, of course, with Nick Fuentes in the picture, they're getting a lot more out than they ever have. And the outrage is definitely there. It's exploding, which we'll go over all of it. It's been a really interesting day. And that whole interview just shows you how he's entirely unrestrained and Jones couldn't reel him in. And it shows you how people do hold their lines. All right, we are joined here by, oh, yes, Portal Complex says he's the one who can save us from climate change. Yeah, Kanye is going to save the world. He's running for office 2024. They really put a wedge between Ye and Trump. I noticed that there's kind of a wedge drawn up there. Like, Trump's not keeping it real. He's got handlers that keep him in line. And I believe Trump is apparently outraged or mad about the fact that he even had Fuentes on the premises. I guess he didn't know, or he claims it was a setup, it was a troll. And is that what we're seeing here? Is this a big troll? Is Ye trolling everybody? I just watched a movie on Netflix called Troll, and I kind of recommend it for anybody who's into this mud flood thing. There are a lot of people who happen to think, and whatever you want to call this, some kind of alternative creation myth. This idea that all of the land masses were once organic things, giants. I mean, you've probably heard the one about how mountains are actually just big tree stumps. Anyway, it kind of goes along with that. Anyway, in this movie Troll, it's basically that the mountains are actually ancient dead trolls that are just simply not animated at the moment, and they kind of wake up. It's kind of like a Norse Godzilla story, but the graphics are fantastic. Anyway, part of this whole thing was they wanted, are we going to have to nuke Oslo because they didn't want the news getting out? And I'm thinking that's kind of what Kanye is. It's like like this troll, and they're just trying to destroy. Do we have to destroy Twitter to get rid of him? Do we destroy the internet? And at this point, yeah, that's probably where they're leading. There's a mass exodus from Twitter as we speak. You'll never get another tweet from Jim Carrey. Now, I don't know if people think Jim Carrey's actually aware. If he is he some kind of guru, or is he just promulgating Masonic and Illuminati symbolism for fun? Is it part of an act? I don't know, but it's very fascinating if you look back at his character. But yeah, he left Twitter. Okay, Tyrone McCloskey says Hitler's a fictional character. Portal Complex says Hitler was a crisis actor, a construct, and a 33rd degree lunatic. I've heard some strange ones. I've heard that Hitler is actually Walt Disney, and if you look at Walt Disney's home and then you flip it and superimpose it over Hitler's bunker, it's the same thing. I've heard that Hitler, I mean, there are stories about Hitler, you can get into it if you care to. But yeah, hippie Hitler. There's this theory that Hitler's actually a woman. I don't even care to go there. Not really. I don't want to go down these trails. That, to me, a lot of this stuff is just. I've heard this phrase, uh, "truth or chicken feed," or or something like that. But basically, um, ideas that are put out there that are entertaining, they're distracting, but they don't have a basis in reality. Like the birds are fake movement is a fake movement, a contrived movement, to make it look like people who question the news are somehow detached from reality, which is just not the case. Tyrone says, of course he's trolling. He's not a billionaire any more than the Zuck. Billionaires in name only. I mean, there are billionaires. There are people who are very wealthy. There are philanthropists, but you know, when they can just take it away and take it's like a status symbol or something. And what is it even worth anyway? All right, let me continue here. Oh yes, Moon Harvest says the troll meme just got brought up on Meme Analysis, and also John LeBon has just done a great piece to do with the latest BBC documentary, Disaster Deniers Hunting the Trolls. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was getting at. I didn't want to read too much into it. I'm watching a movie about a big troll, but I was kind of thinking about there is this kind of analogy here, and how every time I heard the phrase troll in the movie, it just made me think about how they're overreacting to people spreading memes. And of course, recently the term disaster deniers or disaster trolls has been used to describe auto hoaxers, specifically those who not only call things out as fake, stating the obvious, but who actually do some follow up and investigate and track down the different actors and performance artists. And that's where you get into the place where you can get sued. And that's probably going to happen to some of these so called disaster trolls. I would never advocate that. I think it's really strange. You had that individual, Sidethorn journalist, who went to 33 different shooting events hunting for crisis actors, offering $100,000 for evidence of an actual death. Well, obviously nobody could claim that prize because nobody dies, and he would know this. If anything, the $100,000 should have been, we'll pay you if you're a whistleblower to, tell on the whole production. Anyway, I think it's a setup. I thought the whole thing. I think there were a lot of attempts out there to brand the people who question the news as extremists, like they would go hunting down or tracking down actors. Like, again, I would never advocate such a thing. If anything, I'm more interested in who the directors are. And that's kind of the level at which we analyze these things. What's the utility of the story? I don't really care about the extras. I mean, there are some actors that have been given more or less the Golden Hoggy Award. We recognize talent where it exists. There are those who make multiple appearances. In fact, I would say that the acting over there, man, there were a couple that were just terrible recently. I thought Club Q was pretty poorly acted. There were some pretty terrible scenes in there too. Club Q is totally fake. If you missed it, talked about it about a week ago. I did a full breakdown of it. And these are just agenda driven psychological operations, perception management stunts. Nobody actually gets killed. And these stories are always filled up with all kinds of hints. And the names of the actors are always kind of jokes. Like there at the Club Q, you had Rump, Loving, you had the names just had certain connotations. Anyway, if you just joined us, it is December the 1st, 2022. It's Mario's 33rd birthday, and we're analyzing the fallout from Kanye West putting on a Riddler hood and going on InfoWars and saying all the things that you're not supposed to say. But, again, I don't think that he has a point. I really don't. I think this is mostly a self inflicted wound, an intentional foot bullet. I think he could have railed against any group, Samoans, for example, and achieved the same exact thing. There's just, it's not really about any particular group. I think just this form of behavior is cancelable in the view of the PC MSM. All right, if you have any disagreement on that, I'm happy to take calls 833-311-1984. We don't have any kind of restrictions. I'm something of a free speech absolutist in a sense, but I don't think that what we're seeing here is a free speech issue, by the way. Alex Jones being kicked off a platform, it's not a free speech issue. There's a terms of service thing. These are private companies, and it is obviously their right. But yeah, I do think that culturally, uh, we ought to be more accepting of the free flow of ideas and information, and we should be against book burning or the digital equivalent. But for the most part, cancellation or cancel culture is mostly not even a thing. I mean, has anybody been canceled? You can't think of anybody. It's kind of just a way to get street cred. Getting censored is a great way to get publicity. Next to being swatted or faking your own death. These are just marketing tactics that I've noticed. Portal Complex says, checked out the Inside Job cartoon tonight. Yes, Inside Job is ripping on both Kanye and Jones. It's a leftist controlled platform. If you've seen Inside Job, obviously it's a 9/11 reference. I referenced season 1, but the new one, there are just a lot of the humor on there. It's just not family friendly, and a lot of it's just garbage. It's definitely coming from a leftist perspective. I mean, the animation's good. There are some funny one-liners and jokes and stuff, but I could only handle a couple episodes, and it kind of made me sick. All right, go ahead. Call in 833-311-1984. Tyrone says Kanye is harmless and is allowed to say this stuff, so someone who is a threat doesn't get to say it. Like diffusing it, you mean? Kind of waters it down. I mean, he equivocates, and I don't think he's being 100% honest. I mean, it's kind of disingenuous to say, yeah, he loves Hitler, but he also loves everybody. It's like, I'm sorry, but there's kind of a magnitude of difference. He said he loves Jeffrey Dahmer. It's like, well, you don't love Jeffrey Dahmer the same way you love Kim Kardashian, for example. It's kind of strange, these little semantic games they play, but it's excellent trolling. Here's one from The Sun, and a lot of people just didn't get the humor, the jokes, but um, he made a visual pun out of Benjamin Netanyahu's name, mocking the former Israeli prime minister. And some people are ripping him for it. I don't know. I just thought it's so lowbrow that billions are going to laugh at it. That most people on the internet will think it's funny that Kanye, or they'll think he's crazy. It'll be one of the two. Tyrone says diffusing, yes. Yeah, I think it's very intriguing here. The whole thing about it is that it flips everything on its script. And this all started with what? White Lives Matter. And of course, you can't really separate the White Lives Matter from, and Candace Owens from her documentary, which has to do with George Floyd and the very premise of BLM being fallacious. That no, Floyd obviously he wasn't killed by systemic racism; he was killed by fentanyl. I mean, that's kind of the counter narrative that they put forth. But everything's about inversion and about the black and the white is throughout this entire thing. It's pretty well represented, and it's just everything's inverted. That's why he has the song "Black Skinhead." He comes out in a black Klan uniform, basically. Like it's all flipped. And this also, I think, ties in, and I have this all in the mind map, and I didn't want to get too esoteric into this right now, but it does tie in very neatly to this supposed prophecy contained within the work of David Bowie about the Savior, who is identified as the Black Star, and the Starman. And of course, Starman, and then Black Star is the name of Bowie's posthumous album. And that's the album that people believe actually finalizes and affirms that Kanye West is the prophesied Starman, this savior character. And I've done some research into this area and I found some very fascinating connections. And it extends the correlation between Bowie and Ye to the Man Who Fell to Earth character, played by Bowie and now played by another actor also born like Ye in 1977. But there's this reoccurring theme of a black stone, a black rock, black star. Very fascinating stuff here. But it goes even further back, weirdly enough, to the Bowie Elvis connection. And the thing is, and I have this all mapped out, there are some strange Kanye Elvis connections that do tie into this. And I think all of it ties into the real meaning behind idolatry, celebrity worship. There's a reason why celebrities take center stage here. And I think what we're seeing is, I think there's a bigger picture here. And I, I don't think that when Kanye West is posing with the crown of thorns, or when he's set on fire, or he's there with Pluto for the, uh, I guess, inauguration of this return of Pluto, is the planet. I don't think these are mere publicity stunts. I think they're tied into the bigger body of occult symbolism that guides everything that we see. And I think that he's playing some kind of a role here on the world stage. I don't think it's entirely off the rails. And I think much of it ties in to this, what I said, Helter Skelter or Turner Diaries. It has to do with some kind of schism that has to do with the fall of the West. And his name, of course, ties into this whole story. But the schism has to do with this black and white, and that's why they're playing along this cultural fault line, this dividing line here. And it's really interesting if you look at how split things are. And I've been noticing how far right fringe says Jews control everything. Far left fringe says whites control everything. Like, notice the BLM argument is not that Israel killed George Floyd, it was that the white power structure did. And it's just too perfectly split down the middle. Like, I think the public is being played, and this is just business as usual. Let me catch up on comments here. R. Cook says, Ye's too big of a player to not be in the club. Right, well, I think the symbolism kind of speaks for itself. All right, let me continue. Yeah, he did say a number of interesting things. Of course, this is um, it's almost like too easy. They could script this stuff in advance. They know what memes will be very offensive. Um, and of course, the platforming of it is seen as a problem. And this, to me, is also part of a concerted attack on free speech. A lot of these individuals, I think, are almost free speech saboteurs. It helps them control the fringe. And you can't really separate Musk from this. But now look at this. One of the last things that Ye tweeted is the Raelian star, which is kind of strange. The Raelians were some group of, well, kind of like it sounds, they believed that they were in contact with aliens from Sirius. They had some kind of supposed experience with human cloning. But anyway, Ye's on Twitter right now, and he said a few things like, for example, and this is an hour ago, I stand by Balenciaga and denounce all the witch hunts. I cancel culture. Ending trafficking doesn't start or end with a fashion campaign. So he's actually defending, suggesting it's probably nothing. And I have looked into it, and it's not a nothing. It's definitely it's definitely the case that this modeling agency has some kind of strange Podesta-like taste in art. Was it Tony Podesta's brother? Or is it? No, it's Tony Podesta. It's Podesta's brother. These are these Pizzagate characters. But anyway, a lot of their art seemed to have some kind of penchant for children in adult situations, and this whole thing with the teddy bears dressed up in lingerie is kind of what's being more or less defended here, or at least bypassed. Going through some more tweets on this, it's all really, again, this thing's very clownish at times. But let me go ahead and play this clip. This is pretty good. This is where Ye calls Barack Obama not the first black president. He calls him another, quote, Jewish president.
They showed me yesterday. Sorry, go ahead. Ronald Reagan said that too. Well, I think Hitler did target and kill some people. So I think,
I think Obama killed Palestinians.
No, I hear you. Here's where I think the frustration is. And Nick, you can comment on this.
And Obama was not the first black president. He was another Jewish president. It's like he had a really cool outfit and stuff, and he was a really good architect.
Anyway, if anyone wants to call on this topic, and I've been told that the audio feed dropped. I'll see if I can get that corrected. I wonder if it's something we said. There's no way they're going to stop any of this. It's all out there. And in the meantime, I've been finding a lot of strange stuff just popping up in my feed about the Kardashians, more than I ever wanted to know. Here's Kim Kardashian and Courtney Cook. Look, I never watched this show for probably a good reason. But anyway, here's Kim Kardashian cooking someone's placenta and feeding it to their family. Lady Luck Fox 9 on Twitter says this is cannibalism, and it's purely satanic.
Is it a brisket?
Yeah.
Cut you guys a piece?
Oh, it's nice and tender. That knife just melts right through.
Who's going to have the first taste?
I wish I could say that I'd like to warn everybody that they're about to embark on a placenta marathon, but the truth is, everybody in this room has probably done something to me at one point, so I can't wait for them to eat up.
Some kind of a prank, but I guess that would qualify more or less as Kardashians engaging in cannibalism. Very cutting edge. And this is all just there for people to model their behaviors off of. That's the main thing about celebrity worship. People mimic what they see. All right, I fixed the audio. Thanks for letting me know. Again, ips.monster, you can get all the links. And if you go, I don't think it's all that big of a deal necessarily, people eating these things. People think that Monster Energy Drink is satanic. I don't think there's a problem with eating bugs. I'm not judging it, but I am just pointing out here, I'm getting a lot of this stuff in my feed. And I wouldn't feed somebody something like that if they didn't specifically ask for it. And I think that's kind of off. Here's a interesting solution to environmentalists blocking the roads. They've had enough. This is a group of motorists actually scraping the environmentalists off the street. And one of the things I noticed here is that when they get dragged off to the side, they play dead like possums. Like they go limp. There's no fight. You can see they literally just play dead.
Prenez qui pousse l'encul. Prenez qui pousse l'encul. Vas-y, vas-y, vas-y. Prenez qui pousse l'encul. Prenez qui pousse l'encul, je prends pas les couilles. Hey, le premier qui vient, je m'en fous. Vous êtes des ridicules. Quand c'est pays, ça fait pas. Connard. Et tu sais, ça se fait un diable.
Now, what you're hearing are people trying. Look, this is terrible. They're blocking the roads because, of course, they think they have to shut down capitalism and stop us from using dino juice. But they're hurting everybody. And that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, there could be people on their way to get abortions. They could be taking their kids to story hours at the libraries. And it's all being missed because they're blocking the roads here. But you have some people who really, they just had enough and they dragged them out. At least they're not destroying artwork. But I'm an advocate for locking up climate change activists. And when I say law,
and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time. Baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes.
my buddy, my buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996.
96, y'all.
Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a dumb little donkey like Eeyore. I'ma be an auto hoax. Auto hoax, and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes. Ain't got no heart, ain't got no soul. Weather, maps, TV, phones, books, secrets, symbols, numbers, planets, etc. Nobody got no heart.
All right, happy Valentine's Day, 2/14/2023. This is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax, really theme song for the Auto Hoax generation, which is pretty much everyone here. It doesn't matter when you were born, it's when you woke up. And when I say woke up, I mean it's when you became cognizant of the fact that there's a difference between the world stage as televised and the place that we actually live. Got a message here I want to read really quick from Anderson Cooper, or someone pretending to be Anderson Cooper. Anderson Cooper is even Anderson Cooper. I mean, none of these people are, if you ask me, all that authentic. Mass media is deep fake central. And long before digital deep fakes, they were doing it with synthetic masks. And the whole media ecosystem is very masky in every way conceivable. But listen to this. Anderson Cooper sent, bro, you can shut down Infinite Plane Radio. CNN has got you covered. Check the train story in Ohio. And this is what we talked about last night. The train story in Ohio was something that was already depicted pretty much exactly as it occurred in the movie White Noise. And what's even stranger about this, well, strange from the perspective of people who don't know how fake news is and how it corresponds with entertainment, how they're actually part of the same. It's the same unit. It's all part of an integrated sidewar. But for the people who don't know, they say, wow, this is a coincidence. We were extras in a movie about a train wreck that created some kind of airborne toxic event which necessitated evacuations and destroyed the environment. And then they actually live it. Well, CNN actually goes and talks to people in Ohio who performed in the movie that became their reality. And that's why Cooper's basically saying, yeah, we're going into your territory because we're the ones that point out that everything in the news is also concurrently happening in the entertainment, which was recorded or which was produced long before, whereas the news is supposedly happening at that time. And my point being, that's right there evidence that the entertainment media and the news media are one and the same. There's no meaningful distinction between Hollywood and the news, and I used to say that facetiously as a joke, and then it became serious. And today's the 5th anniversary of the Parkland theatrical production, and we'll discuss that a little bit. I have something in common. I have something in common with David Hogg that is worth pointing out here. We have a common foe, And this is kind of this is something I can prove, but this is something that's escaped the attention of the mass media. And the fastest way to find this information, if you want to dig into it, is to go to marcusgoldfinch.com. This is the individual who had a channel called MGTV. And as MGTV, he released a video of David Hogg 6 months before the Parkland event, in which he claimed that David Hogg was an actor. As you can see here on the channel, on the screen, it says the channel is MGTV, and the whole reason David Hogg went viral as a crisis actor was because this channel somehow was able to go viral above even CNN's reports, and YouTube later apologized. But here's a little throwback headline from February 2018. YouTube conspiracy theory spreaders seem reluctant to defend their theories if challenged, but eager if supported. When tragedy strikes, the trolls come out. And this entire article is about how David Hogg was trolled and how it created this, as it says here. And this is, of course, a reference to this same person, Marcus, who is a stalker of this channel, interestingly enough. But it says here, MGTV implored videos to copy his video and post it to their channels. Goes on to say, YouTube is trying to censor the truth about David Hogg, that's what he claims, and they were boosted on 4chan. But his video was trending for a full day before YouTube pulled it, and then they apologized. And this is the origin of the crisis actor theory as far as it being mainstream. The thing is, it was mainstream, no, sorry, it was well known among conspiracy theorists from about, I'd say, 2013, late 2012, but 2013 certainly after Boston. But from 2013 on, conspiracy theorists in the know, I think, were, I don't know, better appraised of this crisis actor thing. It was talked about, and the mainstream conspiracy theorists didn't want to handle that. They just kind of minimized it. But then, as this thing has evolved, as you can see, this crisis actor thing went viral. But this is where it went viral. 5 years ago, Parkland. Let me catch up on comments. I sent out a text, so I'm expecting there to be more today. We were live yesterday and the day before. We're kind of back to a consistent schedule, and I do have a bit of good news. WordPress, I got their attention through Twitter. They worked with me last night, and we removed my stalker from my WordPress account. The two-factor authentication was actually attached to his phone. I mean, when I say stalker and hacker, I mean, he's actually in one of my emails somewhere. That's how he's getting access. That's one of the things I learned last night. I was trying to figure out, how did he get into my Kickstarter? How did he get into my WordPress? How did he vandalize my profile? And what I learned from WordPress last night is there's an email that he compromised, and I can't access it. Google won't let me in. They say, we cannot verify this is yours. They don't even let me try to guess the password. And this must have happened a few years ago, and it explains quite a lot. But I got control of it again. Same thing as with Kickstarter. I have the IP address. I'm adding it to the lawsuit. So as far as the lawfare front goes, we've advanced a huge step forward. I mean, that's twice in 4 weeks that I caught a hacker committing, felony cybercrime. That's twice. And I don't even have a license to catch criminals. Okay, and going through your comments again, and I want to see who's here. I saw someone said it's their first time here. Bobby Gooden says, first time catching a live broadcast, the text notifications are great. Okay, I'm going to keep that up. Minor expense, but well worth it. Mom with Sons is here. Benton, Venus E, Anders A, Penguin 33. All right, cool. And I had the phone number up on the phone. T-Dog 135 got the alert. Excellent. The Penguin signal. We can't rely on YouTube notifications, as you all know. The YouTube channels get shot down left and right. I mean, I'm looking at this article about YouTube conspiracy theory spreaders. Those don't exist anymore. I'm like, YouTube conspiracy theory spreaders? No, they delete it before it even begins now. Interesting times, though. Again, 5 years since Parkland. And what Parkland did is it created a schism between the conspiracy theorists that were friendly to the world stage and believed that people actually died, and those that went backstage and we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the connection between the FBI dad, this son in this theater school, and you put the picture together a little differently when you don't assume the media is telling you the truth. Nick Cruz is not in jail. Nick Cruz didn't kill anybody. The name Nick Cruz, the name Nicholas and Cruz Cross, this is all very much tied in to the narrative they built around the Children's Crusade. The name Nicholas features prominently in that, but taking up the cross, leaving their parents, the entire Parkland thing led this idea. It kind of really started the idea that the youth have to defend themselves because the parents have voted for guns. Therefore, they have to go fight for their rights by marching, just like the Crusades. And they called it a children's crusade when March for Our Lives started. Before that started, David Hogg and company were running around to these different supermarkets and playing dead. And they were doing this to say, look what you're causing. Because adults aren't in the schools. They're not seeing the mass shooter generation terrified, hiding under their desks. But if you put it in their faces in the supermarkets, they can see it. Interestingly enough, what has happened since then? They decided, let's do this as a strategy. Instead of having these victims of a tragedy do die-ins, let's just shoot up the supermarkets. And they've been doing that since. And all of these events are just as phony. I mean, you all are pretty much aware. It was 3/22/21. Super Day for a PSYOP, King Supers, Store 33, Colorado. Every one of these events have the same hallmarks, but they all have the same kind of storylines. Like they recycle. Everything is green. They recycle everything, even their storylines. But I don't want to get too far off of this one. I'm just saying this event is when it really became clear that some people were going to stick with the idea that people were dying and it was a false flag. And some people are going to stick to the truth. And what I realized is the people who like left our Discord server because we were, quote, auto-hoaxing everything, they became QAnoners. In fact, they try to sell me on it. And Q was a very disruptive influence because all of a sudden we went from let's not trust anonymous sources and let's just assume that the media is anonymous and unaccountable. Let's get actual observation. And now suddenly we're trusting the cryptic words of some anonymous person. It made no sense. But Q said that Vegas was real and the deep state did it to make Trump look bad. So not only did this event, polarize us on the real or fake divide, but it also politicized a lot of conspiracy theorists. And they started marching behind Trump as in like, now it became a pro-spiracy. And if you've never heard of a pro-spiracy, I was introduced to this term by the same individuals that introduced me to Q. They said, and this was all offline, they would call me after my live streams, probably feds. And they would say, your views are kind of negative if you're saying there's a conspiracy when there might be some white hats working for us behind the scenes. And I thought, okay, and this means what then? And they said, well, you don't have to do anything. You don't even have to talk about it on YouTube. And they would always kind of suggest that I was putting myself in danger. And what they led me to was the white hats behind the scenes are going to defeat the deep state. Therefore, it's not a conspiracy, it's a prospiracy. It's a positive thing. They're working for us. I was hearing this trust the plan nonsense before they even coined the term trust the plan. Oh, look, Tim Osman in the chat says cathexis. Isa Mahal. He named the exact people that introduced me to Q before Q was actually Q, before the first Q drop on 10/28/2017. Yeah, I'm not gonna denigrate them. They've suffered enough. Their God abandoned them. JFK. In fact, I did see. Let me go and check. I did get a nice piece of hopium. I didn't take the hit. I don't trust it, but I did find there's some circulating. Here's one. And this is from Q, or from someone close to Q. According to JFK Jr., right now we are 10 days of disclosure that ends on Tuesday, February 21st. So on February 21st, it is believed by the QAnon believers, the stragglers, I'm not sure the ones who haven't come back to reality yet. They believe that Trump's going to rip his face off, but it's actually a mask. And it's JFK Jr. behind it. And JFK Jr. is going to somehow save them, even though he's a Democrat. I mean, if you die, I mean, he fake died. I mean, is that a crime? But that's a little bit of hopey. I'm just showing you. I want to get back to the main topic here. Oh, here's another one. Since we're on the topic of the fifth hoax anniversary, one of the Sandy Hook victims, survivors, has been re-victimized. I'll just play this. This is a recycled narrative as well.
It is almost 1 a.m. and I am currently directly across the street from where the shootings at Michigan State occurred. I am 21 years old, and this is the second mass shooting that I have now lived through. 10 years and 2 months ago, I survived the Sandy Hook shooting. And when I was crouched in the corner in school in Newtown.
Anyway, this is not atypical. And this is to create the perception that it's worse than it is. Like, for example, after the Vegas shooting, which the QAnoners believe was real, 50 of the survivors were shot at again at the Borderline Bar and Grill in California, exactly 13 months later. And this was concurrent with a shooting drill being carried out in Thousand Oaks, 5 miles away, with 50 people. And they were reenacting Vegas at the drill while the victims of Vegas were being shot again. If you can believe any of it. You know, these individuals coming out as heroes. Oh yeah, I use my belt as a tourniquet and I use my shirt to tourniquet someone else, and yet he's like spotless. Like, if you apply a tourniquet to somebody with your shirt or your belt, you're going to have some blood on your hands, but nothing. But I mean, we've looked at these things, but just the eerie coincidences, as the media calls them, that's enough to say that it's all just very hoaxy. And do you remember last summer? No, the summer before last. This last summer, it was Eliza Fletcher that was kidnapped and disappeared. The Persephone kidnapped by Hades ritual they do every summer. The one before that was Gabby Petito. And Gabby Petito was actually in a Sandy Hook remembrance music video long before she became famous for being kidnapped by Brian Laundrie, whose name sounds suspiciously close to brain laundry or brainwashing. That's kind of the idea, which is what these operations are ultimately about. I think they have kidnapped our critical thinking, taken it hostage. If you use it, you'll be lambasted, burned at the stake. Now, I have a shirt I want to show you. Rihanna wore this inverted cross to the Super Bowl, and I think this explains everything. You know, this is one of these pictures that says 1,000 words. It says, control minds. I mean, an upside down cross and then control minds. I think that pretty much says it all. It's the inversion of everything that we consider to be right and good. And why would they do it? Well, because they're controlling your minds. And they use this funhouse mirror version of reality that, you know, the movie, the TV screen, this distortion to affect this. And they're pro at it. They've been doing it forever. And it's the point where the public's more or less complicit in it, if you ask me. Kevin McBride asks if we're on D Live. We're not at the moment. We've had to downsize. We're kind of low on gas, the tank. The think tank is still on. But we're not on all the platforms. We're not on everything at the moment, but we will be soon. I've had to divert a lot of my time and energy and resources into lawfare, but it's working. I have filed a lawsuit against YouTube LLC and against my stalker in the same lawsuit, which is going to make it very hard for the co-defendant to hide. And we'll be getting a response within about 3 weeks or so. So again, I want to say thanks to everybody who's helped with that. It's ridiculous that I'm dealing with a White House connected stalker who's actually, again, behind David Hogg's troubles as far as being labeled a stalker and the death threats. And I'm surprised the media hasn't looked into it yet. I've actually emailed him and I've tweeted him. I said, hey, if you want to know who started the conspiracy theory that you're a crisis actor, which I happen to believe in, but I'm not going to say it, it was this guy, MGTV. And MGTV today is actually on Twitter as Hudson W. Hunter, the guy that's really behind Marco Polo and this Hunter Biden laptop fixation. In other words, the guy that started the David Hogg as a crisis actor rumor and my stalker has the biggest collection of Hunter Biden nudes on the internet. Akon says Octagon deepfake. Oh yeah, let's get into the UFOs. They shot down an octagon-shaped craft. There was also a shooting last night. I noticed the shooter had red shoes. It may tie into this general theme we've been looking at. And this Ohio thing. I wanted to point out something else. We've been talking about this movie White Noise and how it preceded the real events in Ohio. Well, I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, this. I watched the movie and I'm like, this movie bothered me because it was like they were doing National Lampoon's Vacation, the whole thing with Chevy Chase and the family driving across the country. And it seemed like the main character was trying to be Chevy Chase, but not funny. Like they were ruining something that, some people might find to be a little nostalgic. And I kind of made the point that the main character in White Noise looks like Clark Griswold. Well, I brought out some pictures last night and I did some comparisons, and they've actually staged them to look just like the Griswolds. Not only that, but this has been picked up by New York Times, who wrote a review about it. Same vibes, unfunny, but New York Times agreed. And I think what the message here, though, is that they want us to dispense with the idea that we can just drive across America anymore. No, that's bad for the environment. They want to destroy this idea of the pre-reset world, this nostalgic idea you get in the family car, the station wagon, you drive across the country and have some kind of no way. Now it's all metaverse. And here's a little excerpt from New York Times' review on it. One of the first aha moments, he told me, was recognizing amid the tension and distress of an evacuation, there was a very National Lampoon's Vacation feeling running through the action. Jack is like Clark Griswold. The kids are yammering in the back seat and the father's just trying to drive the car. I don't necessarily recommend it. I think that they are intentionally trying to ruin National Lampoon's Family Vacation. I think they're trying to ruin that idea, that that family that, they kind of fight, but at the end they all get together. They're trying to kill that. And they did. They ruined it, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, let me continue through your comments. Somebody said 99 balloons. Oh, yes, there was that song, 99 balloons, and I have it referenced here. There's some lyrics to it, but it specifically says, okay, 99 Luft balloon lyrics. It's about starting World War III with balloons. And the music video is pretty much a bunch of nukes. Okay, continuing. Locals used as extras. I mean, this is one of the most blatant examples of predictive programming, concurrent programming, and the public just so deceived that they're willing to just ignore it and say, no, this is just life imitating art. The cliche just makes them feel safe, I guess. But it matches on too many levels. And I remember watching this movie thinking that this is, obviously predicting the next major threat, which is the quote, I think, airborne toxic event. And I said this before. The next time they do something that requires us to mask, the mask will not be partisan. You could say, okay, I don't believe in the virus, whatever. But everybody believes in radioactive waste, in dirty bombs. No one's going to take that risk to score some political points. Okay, let us continue. Other things I wanted to cover today. The UFO task force being created by the White House, and they're going to do the invasion. And it doesn't matter if you think it's unbelievable. Did it matter what you thought about 2020? No, it matters what the consensus thinks. And the consensus will believe what it's told to believe and when. Now, this is from John LeBon123 on Twitter. If they wanted to pull off a fake alien invasion, they could do so easily. The masses would fall in line, the skeptics would be ostracized and marginalized. If you don't know this, then what were you doing in 2020? And he makes a really great point there, because we are going to be censored for alien denialism. If you don't believe in aliens, they're going to somehow make that a punishable thought crime. You don't believe in aliens, you're anti-science. And it was just a few years ago where if you believed in aliens, you put on your tinfoil hat and you watch the X-Files. Now, if you don't believe in it, you're anti-science. You're an enemy of civilization, you're a racist school shooter, and all that. Now, this is from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The Army cleared an area for a secret UFO landing with a cover story of a train derailment spilling toxic nerve gas into the area. Conversely, Biden's White House is using UFOs to distract from train derailment spilling toxic gas. I kind of think that's a guardrail. Everyone's like, oh, you're distracted. You're being distracted from Ohio by the UFOs. The UFOs are distracting you from the football game. I'm thinking these are all just distractions from obviously flat Earth, right? But everybody's like, you're not distracted by the right distraction. Like, do I have to be distracted? Do I have to be concerned with the current thing of the left or the current thing on the right? And they both have current things. Gould Peters went from clots, grasping at clots, to goo blood, to now it's goo rain. Now he doesn't care about people suddenly died from vaccines. Now it's the rain. His little suddenly died thing kind of wore out. Although he's still convinced that Damar Hamlin is a zombie, dead. And you know what? I hate to give him credit for being right because I think he's just a sensationalist. However, I'm looking at Damar Hamlin at the Super Bowl and he has a zombie Jesus on the back of his jacket. It's been called out as blasphemous by many. It's obviously a zombie Jesus. But here's a guy who supposedly died or almost died, 3 days later came back from the dead, all kinds of ritualistic symbolism, which we've discussed ad nauseum here. And he's coming out to a public event wearing a very offensive depiction of Jesus on the back of his jacket. You wouldn't do that with a Muhammad. But, I guess it's just an indication here that, he's aware and we're aware. It's like he's saying, I know you know. Because it was a death resurrection ritual. Okay, let's continue. Here's the newest thing. Again, this is just an example of how it actually works in real life. 2020, you have the NPC being hypnotized by the virus. 2021, the vaccine. 2022, Ukraine. Now it's UFOs. And you may think that's a meme and it's to laugh at. No, that's actually a diagram. It's actually a script, more or less. Erica Bear says, if you don't like your aliens, you're racist and xenophobic. They could play that. They could say the UN soldiers with the blue helmets identify as aliens. And if you don't agree with them, they can shut you down. And as long as they can shut down criticism, anything can be made real. Going through your comments again. Commenter says, media amplified weaponized interdependency. Interesting way of putting it. I think we have this collective Stockholm syndrome where people defend their captors. Like, oh, the captor's lying, the captor's psychologically abusing you, it's gaslighting you, but you have to defend it because your sense of order in this reality depends on them maintaining it for you. People are lost. There's 72 hours of news every 24 hours. Every day, you get 3 days worth of news. You can't parse it all. You're forced to absorb it through osmosis. And you don't have time to dispute every story. And if your operating system is off, like most people's is, like as in if you assume it's real because it's on a screen, yeah, you're going to be lost. You're meant to be. The screen is your Masonic hoodwink. It's the darkness they impose. That it's the ignorance they put over you, over your life. It's just imposed ignorance because you're not an initiate like Damar Hamlin. You haven't been through their special clubs. You haven't seen the light. You're not up on the capstone where you can see how rigged everything is. And rigged it is. If you go to johnlevon.com, he did a great video on the Super Bowl and how the score, and it's not even numerology, it's just pattern recognition. How it corresponds with the Australian version of the Super Bowl, some event there. The point of it is, it's just too coordinated. Watchdog asks what happened to IPS.monster. We're temporarily down in a few areas. Like I said, budgetary constraints, but everything will be back up soon. The main thing is we have the 24/7 feed and the audio and the text alerts back on. It's like wheels come off this thing as we're moving forward, and we have to put them back on while we're moving. but we managed to pull it off. JT33 says selling gas masks would make a killing right now. Yeah, I would do it now before they ban it. If you recall, when 2020 started, people on Amazon who were selling PPE were penalized. There was one entrepreneur who drove around to every dollar store and he bought all the hand sanitizer. He filled up his garage and then he was selling it on Amazon. Amazon shut him down. They made an example out of him. Oh, how dare you profit off of tragedy? It's like, who cares? If he's supplying a service to people who want it voluntarily, voluntary exchange, if he's facilitating commerce, then what's the problem? There isn't a problem. The problem was Jeff Bezos wanted to be the one to make the money. And what they did is they monopolized PPE. And then I remember right after this started, I said, those masks is really dumb. Why don't you get some of these, what do you call the gaiters? And I started putting these gaiters out there on my site because I was like, at least you can not look like one of these sheep. Immediately after, like a day and a half after, it's just like, whoa, this just a few days ago, we were talking about how these gaiters don't look as dumb. And then you had these reporters on the news describing why you shouldn't use gaiters, and they were blowing out candles through the gaiter fabric. Like, look, it doesn't stop anything. No, they wanted to ensure uniformity. Because, and I mentioned this before, and I rarely paid attention to the role of fashion in psyops and in mind control until I started studying Ye last year. But it seems to me that 2020 was spread with not necessarily more than anything, I would say, I think the compulsive nature of it was spread through fashion. I mean, yeah, it was the fear that was first that got people to pay attention, but it was the fashion, the mask. You had to put on something to protect yourself, and everybody got in line, and if you didn't, you stood out. And it was about imposing conformity of thought through uniforms, just like they do in the military, just like gangs do, just like cults do. I'm surprised they didn't have us shave our heads. Yeah, it could live in your hair. At the time, they were saying it lives on the money. And I thought, why don't they just have us all shave our heads? We can be like one of these dystopian science fictions. That's another form of uniformity. And that's what they do in cults. That's what they do in military, obviously. Okay, so they are destroying all positive and nostalgic conceptions of the pre-reset world. So I don't recommend white noise. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, what's up, caller? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Awesome. What do you think about these train wrecks happening right after a Netflix movie? Does that seem too coincidental?
I seen you send out that thing on the. Someone sent it out on the Telegram today, asking that poll, right?
Right.
Did you see that?
I saw it. I didn't answer it, but what was your answer?
I didn't answer it either because I ain't got a clue.
Okay.
Well, a little bit about that yesterday, and the movie just parallels with it so much. I mean, how can it not be? Or are we just grabbing for straws?
You know what? Now that we have CNN even pointing it out and interviewing actors that were extras in the movie who are now affected by it, I think we can pretty much say we have a point. We're vindicated.
Right. I agree because it's just yeah. Okay, I'm old enough. I'm a lot older than you. So what they used to do on events in the late 70s and all through the 80s and up to the 90s or Waco and stuff, they used to have their event, and then within 6 weeks, they always put a Monday night movie out. So they did it reverse. They would do the event and then put the movie out to reinforce it.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
If you think about it, they always did that. And I used to say, oh, okay, when's the movie going to come out about that? And I wasn't awake, but I just knew that was happening. It was always a Monday night. And it was big in the United States. I know you're from the States too, but it was big that Monday night movies were big for a while there. That was the thing. Everybody couldn't wait for the Monday night movie. It used to be called the $1 Million Movie at first. Then, of course, $1 Million went way out of the thing, so it's just called the Monday night movie. And so that's it's just doing it the opposite way now. Can you see that or not?
Yeah, that's an incredible take on it, and you're right. I pointed out how they use the movies to reinforce the psyops, and people have the emotional connection often through the movie version of it, and not the actual footage. And I noticed that when the Boston bombing movie came out with Marky Mark Wahlberg, I was like, wait a minute here. They're making the movie more realistic than the psyop, and they're using footage from the psyop in the movie, and they're censoring that, saying it's too graphic. And I'm like, okay, I see what they've done here. They've merged fiction and reality, but you're right. They used to do it after to reinforce it. Now they're doing it before to make us suggestible, and so we accept it. They've accelerated.
And then I want to not really change the subject, kind of same thing. I was one of those naysayers about this alien invasion stuff. I said, oh, we've never guessed what they're ever going to do, ever. We've never guessed. We've always had to go after the fact. You know, oh, we kind of expect it, but you never know what they're going to do. But they're really hammering this freaking aliens everywhere across the freaking world right now. Brazil, Russia, everywhere. They're getting these sightings. Are they really going to go for it, you think?
I think that the masses are so gullible that they probably will. And I noticed one thing too. For years they've been calling these the UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. But now all of a sudden it's UFO again. All of a sudden they're using the lingo of the conspiracy theorists that the Air Force helped to create. They created the whole UFO culture thing with the abduction stories. That was all from the Air Force.
I know they created just like created conspiracy theorists. There's no such thing as conspiracy theorists. It's just a word they made up.
It's a word they made up to label anybody who looks at the news with any degree of skepticism.
Right. So but I never thought they would go for this alien invasion. There's just too many of us knew it, but really, do people really know it? I don't know. How many? Oh,
Look,
can you see what I'm saying?
I can, and I've seen levels of. I think the only pure auto hoaxers, the only real skeptics, are the ones who won't fall for some kind of guardrail. For example, the QAnoners. They want the alien invasion. God. They believe that Q is the vanguard of the Pleiadians, who are the good aliens, like blue avians versus the deep state reptilians. There are a lot of people who want this. I think it ties into a lot of like religious mythology as well. They want a savior from above. And how much of our conditioning has been to prepare us for a savior?
Everything is the one. That's what I'm saying. What do you mean one? Why is there always one? In the movies, it's always one. One. There is not someone going to come and save you. It's just not going to happen. So what's about this? You know, you made me think when it goes to that thing with the QAnon stuff. You know, they're pushing that Nazar Gazar shit, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Just like the left is always talking about universal basic income, and the QAnoners are like, no way, never. They want universal basic income, but they call it NESARA. And yes, there's actually some recent postings, and I have one here, where yes, the QAnoners believe that there's a market crash that's going to happen today, on the 14th, and at some point it says here there's going to be a global currency reset, and they're going to implement NESARA and GASARA laws, and it'll give the global financial system back to, quote, the people. So apparently there's going to be a crash today, but we'll make out.
It was supposed to be the 29th also. I got a friend that's just like hardcore Q. I mean, this guy, it's sad. I mean, it's sad. This is how deep it goes. Did you know it's religious?
Yeah, I did. I believe that there's elements of it where it's like, I called it originally a neo-Christian cult because it involves this idea of the rapture. It's very evangelical. Where your disbelief makes them think that they have a point. They
believe. Yeah, go ahead. They believe already. They believe that all these politicians have been arrested already, and the one like Hillary Clinton, they're all doubles out there now, because they've already been arrested, and the state's already taken them out, and they've either executed them or they're in Guantanamo Bay. They really believe that. They believe Trump is actually the reinforcement. Trump is sent by God. And I know when I say this, it sounds light, but no, they are to the core with this. It is scary to me. I mean, it really is. And they believe they're supposed to be raptured. My friend is doing so much. He's 71 or 2. He literally has built big garden planters out his house and getting them ready and showing his wife how to do it and stuff, because he wants to make sure when he's raptured that his wife, because she's not worthy, will have something to eat while he's gone.
Now, this is where it gets to be in not so funny territory because when you get down to it, General Flynn, who's one of the masterminds behind this psyop, he calls himself I am Flynn in his hashtag. Well, I am is a reference to the I am temple. And the I am, or the I am church, the I am movement, it was called the Church Universal Triumphant. And they believed that there was a war behind the scenes between the Great White Brotherhood and the powers of darkness, just like the White Hats and the Deep State.
Right.
And they believed that they were channeling ascended masters, people who were supposedly dead, but who were still lurking around somehow. Just like the QAnoners and all these dead celebrities like Michael Jackson and Princess Di and JFK. Well, anyway, General Flynn has actually used the prayers from this cult in their big Patriot meetings. And that was a big clue there. In other words, that was a doomsday cult that ended with all of its members hiding in bunkers thinking that China was going to nuke them, and they gave all their money to the cult leader. And when it didn't happen, they said, we must have prayed away nuclear Armageddon. They took credit for stopping it. And it's the same people behind Q.
It's scary, but it's funny, but scary is funny.
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, the gods must be laughing, or whoever the demiurge is laughing, because this is
No,
human.
I'm saying it's scary at the same time funny, because they're so dumb.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that you would think that they're gonna fall for this, but I followed this enough to realize that they are following an intentional set of clues that brings them into an alternate reality, and then they have agents to help them be in-grouped into a cult like environment, and then they're insulated from their family, and then their family gets out-grouped for not believing all the wacky stuff. And yeah, I think it's 100% certifiable occult.
And they always say it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. I said, Gary, go back. I said 1850 in the Civil War and 1860 when it started. Everybody, this is the end of times. It says in the Bible. Look, this is exactly what the Bible says, and Jesus is coming because it's like this. Oh, in 1918, the pandemic or a huge earthquake. It says it in the Bible. Look, it's going. Boom, boom, boom. Every generation can match whatever they want. It's in the Bible. And they all think, and then the ones that's doing it now, they were wrong. They just didn't see like this. Like you said, they could just pray away that bomb. So every generation thinks they can make the signs of the times fit what they want in the Bible. And you understand what I'm saying on that?
100%. That, what we see this also with the political religions like communism, where they always say, "Oh, we're the ones we're waiting for." Communism didn't work before because greedy people took over. And the new line is, we can run communism with AI because it'll eliminate systemic corruption. In other words, it'll work this time around, and we can create our utopia. And these are all utopian schemes: Great Reset, Great Awakening, Workers' Paradise.
Oh yeah, he says that all debts are supposed to be gone. Every debt is going to be erased. And did you know why it's being erased? Did you know why they're getting rid of that? Do you know what they say about that? Why?
All debts will be forgiven. Why?
Because they need the earth to be, all the ones that are raptured, the ones that are behind, they need to be able to concentrate and to be worthy to. As the progressive rapture keeps going, they need to be able to have their time. So they're getting rid of all the debts and all that, and you won't, and so that you will compare yourself. I forgot there's a word for it. Prepare yourself and get yourself worthy, and once you hit worthy enough, then you'll be raptured.
Fascinating.
That's why.
Fascinating. And think about the rapture story. It's like they've reinvented it with UFOs. They use a tractor beam to rapture you up. And this is,
I didn't hear that one.
oh no, this is like some powerful symbolism. I'm saying like War of the Worlds, all these stories, X-Files. If you look at X-Files at the intro, the UFO believers are holding signs that say, "We believe," and that's because the believers believe that they're going to be raptured ahead of the ones that laughed at them. The UFO cult is a rapture cult, and QAnon's infused with it, but it's templated off of the Christian concept of a rapture.
Yeah, they had one in the 70s or 80s in California. A bunch of them, they all killed themselves there too. They thought they were supposed to be raptured by the alien spaceship was supposed to come pick them up. That was a big story back then.
Oh yeah. Hale Bopp, Marshall Applewhite, definitely. And don't drink the Kool-Aid. And I spell it with a Q, because they're pretty much at that point where, and Rachel Maddow, I follow all sides of the political spectrum to see what hysteria they're pushing. And what she's pushing right now is that the QAnoners might be quiet now, But when it's time to arrest Trump, they're going to attack the system. Just a little predictive programming. That's how the cult may end. Instead of hiding in bunkers, maybe they'll go out with a bang.
But they can't get it. I almost had my friend realizing that Trump's part of them and just the same. They're all the same people. He almost got to it, but then he started listening to these people with this Nazar Gazar. And they think, why it's the two. Nazar and Gazar. You know why it's the two different names, right?
No, why is that?
Well, Nazara is for ours. It's the national for the United States. God has chosen America to be first and to be like that. It's going to be the special place. And Gazara stands for global, and the G
And
stands for
national.
global
Okay.
and national. And
Okay.
that's how they look at it. And yeah, so America's supposed to be first, and then the rest of the world follows.
Interesting how America's chosen, America's special. They've kind of stolen that whole idea, like we're now the chosen ones. And I've even heard Glenn Beck say that our founding documents were touched by the finger of God, that it's
Yes,
scripture.
they follow Glenn Beck like crazy.
Yeah, and he's connected to the whole Mormon cult, which is Masonic Christianity.
I was raised there. I went on a mission and everything, and I quit going after I got on a mission. I didn't go anymore just because I didn't go. But now I see, I go, oh my gosh! Even on the Salt Lake Temple, they got all the signs and symbols right there on the outside. And when you walk into the temple, you go right inside. And when you have to get down, it's where people have seen it when it's supposed to be resealed or something like that. People have gone through. But the first thing you go into is called the World Room, and it has a huge giant globe in the middle, and you all sit around this globe. Not that you're worshiping the globe. It just happens to be. It's called the World Room, so they have the globe in there. I mean,
Right.
it's huge. It's
Well,
taller than you.
I look at Mormonism and Scientology and NASA. These are all space religions. Because in Mormonism, you have the idea of the celestial kingdoms where you do well here and you're born in the right family, in the right social economic income level, you get to go to the big heaven where you get to have 50 wives and you make babies 24/7 for eternity. I mean, that's some of their myths are about populating planets. It's about interplanetary
Yes, no, no.
expansion.
They say as a man was as a man is, God once was, and as God is, man may become. Is what their thing is. So they think you can not be. You'll never be as good as God, but you can become a God, and God will always can because they believe eternal knowledge. You never stop learning. So the God that's ahead of you is always your God, but you can become like God was at one time by having your own planet.
This is fascinating to me. The structure of it, it's all pyramidal. And speaking of Q, I've realized that Q is a Ponzi scheme. But instead of having you invest your money, they have you invest your social capital. And you're all putting in and you're all funneling your resources towards the person at the top or the person ahead of you. These political leaders are all part of this. I think it's a big scheme. And what are they promising? That at the end of this thing, all this investment's going to pay off, and everybody who laughed at you is going to realize that you had inside knowledge that you were acting on wisely. And I think the Q pyramid scheme is going to collapse at some point. It's just about there.
They believe that it's already happened, that we're in the Gazar and the Nazar right now. We're in it, and it's happening. They're just not letting people know. Only they know it's happening. Only they know all the politicians are being replaced already, and they've been arrested or executed already, and that Hillary Clinton's not real, and Biden's not real. All of them are not real. They're not there. They've been replaced already by that, and they're killing all the what they call deep state.
Devil,
They're really it goes deep. They're out there.
they call it devolution. I actually heard this on Eddie Bravo on Rofkin. Devolution is what they call this. They say, oh no, Trump is still president. Biden's just an actor, but the military is actually in control. And the military operation involves Cywar, and they're using deep fakes and masks to replace all the people that they're executing. And every time a celebrity got a shot with the vaccine, it was just a wink to us to let them know that they got shot at Guantanamo. So you had all the QAnoners at home cheering,
I didn't
thinking,
hear that one.
oh yeah, I would always say, oh, just look, Pelosi got shot, and they would all cheer and high five. And I'm like, wait, they're cheering on the deaths of their enemies with secret tribunals. I mean, that's not exactly what I would think of as like patriotic, but a different type of mentality about how government should be used. But the fact that they're bloodthirsty, eating their popcorn, watching this stuff says quite a lot about the movement. It's like every other religion. They want to see the infidels burn.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, when you say the Mormon religion on that, they believe in the celestial world, telestial world, and terrestrial world. And there's three different kingdoms, and they believe if you get to the highest degree of glory, and they also believe that their wives to come with them when they have the other wives when they get up there and stuff is they have to. The wife can't come unless the man tells her and puts his hand like they call through the veil and brings her through the veil and into the upper kingdom.
Oh, that's right.
So
And then they do the retro, was it retro baptisms? Because I was sort of, I wasn't a
not
Mormon.
retro.
What do you call that? The back.
It's called baptism for the dead, and they did do it in the Bible. I mean, a lot of things that they do that a lot of people, if they don't understand it, they just disregard it, and it's called baptism for the dead. They quote this one scripture called, "Else what shall they not do that are baptized for the dead if the dead not rise at all?" So they're teaching, there's no resurrection. Then he says, then why are you baptizing people for the dead if there's no resurrection? They were doing one thing and not doing another in the Bible. So yeah, the Mormons baptize for the dead. What they do is they get the ancestral records. That's why they're big in ancestry, and they get someone's name, and by proxy, you're baptized for them, so that the whole world can be baptized and have the same judgment.
Yeah, exactly. They go through your family tree, and they'll go ahead and they'll be a favor, like, oh yeah, I baptized your ancestors for you. That's cool. Thanks.
Right.
Hey, look at this
You want
commenter. For T-Dog135 says, Qbert was an alien that speaks in gibberish as well.
I love Qbert. God, I'm old enough. I loved that game.
Yeah,
You know what
I like
Qbert
the
is?
art. Yeah, I like the pyramid of cubes. I've been looking at the artwork and the little. I don't know what he looks like, a meatball. What is he? He's an alien apparently.
I don't know. He's just like a little thing you squeeze, I think, and his nose pops out or something. I don't know. I don't know what he is. I never thought of that. Talk about a generic non-whatever,
Yes,
you know?
but no, I do like these old games though. I mean, I like the pixelated art. It's just there's something charming about it. And anyway, this has been a great call because this Q movement, it's got to come to a head soon because their main leader is on really shaky ground. He's being possibly threatened with arrest for this thing in Georgia, and a lot of people have lied under oath. So it's getting to be very ugly. I'm not sure how it
I
ends.
don't know. I'm not into it. I just had to, because I had to argue with my friend all the time. Who's a Q leader? I don't even know what you're talking about there.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
About,
look, the Q movement should have ended when JFK didn't show up at 110 years old on a walker to save them on November 22nd. That should have been the moment where they had a wake-up call, but supposedly they just decided they were just cleansing the energies and that he's going to come next year.
I thought, and Trump didn't get elected. That was it. I mean, how can you even go past that? If they go past that, they can go past anything, you know? And they can rationalize, oh, he's really president. No, he's not. But so I'm going to disagree with you on that. It's not going to end.
Oh,
They got it. It's going to go.
5D chess, 6D chess, 7D chess.
Yeah.
You think the cognitive dissonance and the making excuses for the plan not coming true will just perpetuate indefinitely?
Well, don't the Bible guys say that all the time? I mean, I was raised that way. I'm 64 and I don't have to deal with it. I'm Harmon, by the way. I'm sure you knew that.
Oh,
But
awesome. Yeah, I actually did.
yeah,
See you in chat all the time.
yeah. What you call it? They do it the Bible time. They make excuses. Well, this was supposed to happen. This was just like this money reset was supposed to be January 29th. My friend swore he knew he wasn't going to be here. Well, I won't see you again. He was going to be raptured by 29th. They're going to do the reset of the money, and now the new date was the 14th. You said today.
Yeah, today. Today's the crash.
They just keep moving. There'll be a reason they're not doing it. Oh, and the reason the first one, what was the original date that was supposed to be? Do you know the very first date it was supposed to happen?
No, what was the original date?
September 12th or 13th. So they had to have 9/11 because 9/11 stopped it because they knew that it was going to happen. So the original date was supposed to be 9/11.
Okay, I have heard this.
9/30.
Yes, that the QAnoner belief about this Nasara Gassara was that we were all about to have free money starting on 9/13, but on 9/11 they ruined the plans and kept us enslaved to the globalists. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so you think they can tell these guys anything.
You know what? Actually, there's actually some truth to this because the Canadian Queen of QAnon, and there's a King Carlson, not Tucker, but there's a King David Carlson. There's Queen Carlotta, I think that's her name, the Canadian QAnon Queen, and she told her followers, "Hey, Gassara is coming. Don't pay your electric bill." don't pay your bills. And people stopped paying their bills, and they were instructed, you just got to say this bill has been covered by Queen, her name Diddaloo, Queen Diddaloo.
Oh,
And a lot of
yeah.
people's homes went dark. They were all talking about the QAnon. They always say 10 days of darkness is coming. Well, a lot of them brought it in sooner by cutting off their own power.
Unreal. They you know, it keeps them from actually doing anything productive and helping any situation. It actually keeps these people at bay because why should I worry about tomorrow when it's going to end today?
That's an
You
excellent
know?
point, and this extends to also the environmentalist thing. I think what the elite like to do, and this is how I think Q is probably an elite program to keep us locked in an ever-present now. They don't want you to plan long term like they do. They don't want you to think 50 years ahead. The fact that they script out their news and they bend the news a generation in advance, that tells you they think ahead. They want you to be in the moment and to think the world could end tomorrow. It puts us at a strategic disadvantage. That's time control.
You know, you saw that you're talking about the benders when they were building that 1968 one from England, and they were talking about 73 news that happened. You know, and this show was actually 68. You know,
Yeah, the
and
show.
things happened.
Yeah,
How can you people not see that?
the news benders play about how they bend the news 5 years in advance. Everything that was in that play happened in reality. Like it was just, yeah, that was
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And people still, you tell them that, and it just pings off their freaking head. To me, I say it's like throwing BBs at a steel wall. It just doesn't penetrate.
No, it
You
doesn't.
know?
It doesn't. That's a great way of putting it, and it's because what you're coming up against, you're throwing BBs against the monolith, the monolithic mind control system symbolized by the screen, the black screen, and everybody who puts that black screen before their eyes is wearing the hoodwink that puts them into this intentional darkness where they cannot see through the Cywar. They cannot see the world stage for what it is. That's the main thing I gathered out of Kubrick's work in general with this monolith concept is that what they have done with 9/11 is they've monolithically pulled us all into a single story, and they like look at Christianity. You look at a religion built around what? Like it's built around a central character, but a central tragedy, the crucifixion. And 9/11 was one of these major tragedy events that synchronized everybody. And after that, we were all on the same script, and that's what they're
The
constantly doing.
lockstep you're talking about?
Yep,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, that's crazy. What was I going to say? Yeah, I had something, but you got me so interested in what you were saying. Yeah, that
Well,
lockstep.
newsbenders. You
They
were
got
talking
us
about
all on
newsbenders.
lockstep.
Newsbenders. Was it 73? So it's 5 years in advance. But newsbenders. It's a play about how they openly. Well, not only were they writing the news in advance, but the news reporters were all implanted with chips. So if they ever went off script, they could be taken out.
Yeah. Good call. I really appreciate talking with you today. It was fun.
Yeah,
But I
definitely.
just had to tell you because of my friend. I mean, he's so freaking lost, you know. And there's some tons of them. How many things? Okay, real quick. What would you say if you had to put a number to how many they are? Would you say 50 million of them?
Okay, the number of QAnoners. I've been told it comprises a certain percentage of the Republican Party, and I think I've seen estimates as high as 30 million. It depends. It's on a spectrum. But as far as the people who accept the general premise, it's probably much higher because the QAnon general premise is based on older conspiracies anyway.
Huh. And they just keep kicking the can down the road, like you said. I heard you say that so many times.
Yeah,
Just kicking the can down the road.
JFK is going to show up when the ocean levels rise up and flood Florida.
My friend in 1990 something, when they were talking about it's going to start flooding, he lives right on the west side of, you go down the panhandle part of the Florida. So he actually went out and put his stick in there, a big nice, not a real, I mean a high quality measuring stick for how the ocean will move. Hasn't moved an inch in the whole time. He says, well, it hasn't moved. And they keep saying it. He goes out there, looks at 2012, we're supposed to be flooded. You know, Florida's supposed to be underwater according to Gore. And he goes, and he still has his stick out there, and it hasn't moved. It hasn't moved. End of story. It just doesn't move.
I would ask him to
You
check
know how-
one more time because I think in 2020 to 2021, 50 the ocean. It might have gone up a little
Hmm.
bit, but it wasn't global warming if it did.
Well, if we're on a recycling process and somehow down in the South Pole and this water, like let's say there's four main water systems and it's a filtration system that come the four main rivers out of the north and it goes all the way down, cycles down to the south. Maybe it just everything just cycles out of it. That's just my thing. Because there has to be a cleansing area in this world, or else it would have been polluted. I think.
You
So
know,
I think it has its own cleaning system.
you may be onto something there. I was looking at one of these old Mercator maps that has the North Pole with a island in the middle, and it,
Hmm.
it looks like if that is what it is, that it would have a function. It's just too symmetrical. It's like this has got to be some kind of a, yeah, like you said, a filtration system.
Yeah, just like we do. Like we filter stuff. It's just filtering again. It goes all the way to the South Pole and comes back. And it's like why I just figured this out. Really, I mean, maybe someone's always say, how we believe the sun comes around and makes circles and stuff. Well, I don't think it's the sun. I think it's the light source, the magnetic source, and I think the the light source causes the sun. I think it has the power and the power of the center of the sun, just like in the yin and yang. It forms in the middle. That's why it's not tangible. It's just something you see. But anyway, why everything works in a vortex, why all trees, all plants, all animals, everything has a vortex or spiral thing is because if the ether is just completely making circles every day, 360 degrees, that force alone would cause and react to something growing like a tree so long and anything else. That's why it would spiral with that force of the making continuous circles. That's what I was thinking.
Interesting, interesting, fascinating. I'm
You know,
I'm I'm looking at a book right now on the Druids and their concepts of the universe and their cosmology, and it's all based around the not just the circle and the cycle of the sun, but more like the spiral as it goes through time. And the spiral is just an intrinsic part of their whole paradigm. Fascinating.
yeah, that's how we age. Because if this ether is electromagnetic, it's just one day, it is a clock. The world is a clock. We know the sky's a clock. We've learned all this stuff in the last since 2015. Now we realize it. Even the Hunger Games show you it's a clock. So the clock is going to age you. There is time. You can't. People, there's no such thing as a man construct. No, there is time. Things age. Things decay. Time does that. It's not. We didn't invent that. So we ain't invented nothing. We just discover it. That's all. And so when the sky turns, so that field has to affect the plants. It has to affect that because it's constant. It doesn't never give up. So it's just constantly moving. So that's why stuff growing that way. That's what I just thought of that about 2 days ago. I don't know if you think what you
Very
think about that.
interesting. No, I think you may be onto something. I'm looking at the symbolism of Saturn and Father Time, the hourglass, the scythe, and in all the old images, you find Saturn or Kronos eating his own child, and it makes no sense. And then you look at there's even I think the biblical archetype that connects to this would be Abraham with the knife about to stab Isaac, and then he stopped. But the whole point of it is, what does that mean? It sounds crazy. Well, it's all just symbolic language. And the instant that you're born, Father Time is devouring you until you die. It's just kind of a truism. And it's explained in a lot of the imagery. And I think that, yeah, we're born into a realm, we're being devoured from the moment that we're conceived, and you are every year, yeah, the time is taking its toll, the grim reaper, the harvest.
Yeah. And so that's just to me it's so simple. Once that's the thing when we learn about flair. We learn this. It's not complex. It's simple. It's not a blackboard that's 2 stories high and you got this professor writing billions of things. No, that's complicated. The world really isn't complicated. The sky clock isn't complicated. The ether's not complicated. It's not hard, in my opinion.
This is all very interesting, especially how everything is based on this clock, and on a larger picture, the timing of the transition into a new astrological house. And a lot of the burning house symbolism we've seen, I think, is about the previous age being burned. But it's absolutely true that even the richest man in the world worships the god of time. That's why he bought that $42 million clock and put it in the mountain. And there's all kinds of Saturnian symbolism. It's designed to last 10,000 years. Again, Saturn returns every 10,000 days. They worship this god of time and constraint, the ruler of this world, whatever it happens to be.
Right. Who know? Well, that I don't think we'll find out that mystery. I like Peter and Pete. People should really look at their channel. They've been flat earthers forever. They do science, and people just don't listen to what they do. Like they show you that like H2O, water is not H2O. It just isn't. It's never been proven. They got all these pseudoscience little experiments they show, but they've always induced the element within it. The air isn't whatever. What is air? Oxygen and all this stuff. It doesn't exist. Oxygen is a man-made element. They show you. They break it down to how much. When you say everything's a lie, you got to remember everything's a lie. You know, oxygen in the air. It ain't true. It's just the air, ether. It's just air. It's just water. You don't know what it is, and they try to make all this stuff.
Yes.
Man's never done it.
Let me make a point here is that you're not denying these things exist. What you're refuting is the explanations we've been given, which probably omit the truth. And that's a big difference, between saying, "Oh, they don't believe in science." No, that's not true. We just don't believe lying scientists. And we are fact-based, and we have to recognize that some things are fakeable. Like, okay, deep space. If a scientist shows you a picture of a star 42 million light years away, is it real? Every single believer in space will raise their hand and say, yes, it's real. A scientist showed it to me. Well, guess what? The scientists behind the $10 billion James Webb Telescope put a salami in a Photoshop image of the sky and convinced them all. If they can fake you out, if they can fake the smartest rocket scientists in the world with a piece of salami, they can fake you with cartoons about what exists at the micro level.
Right. And these guys, Peter and Pete, they're just amazing. And after all these years, they still only got like 4,000 followers, but they're really consistent, And so it's like I taught them this on one thing they picked up on the channel, like, the word real, right? So if you add ITY to real, right? You know what that makes real?
Tell me.
Add ITY to real. What is that?
I'm missing your math. You tell me.
No, real. The word real. And you add the letters ITY to the end of it.
Oh, reality, I see.
What does that make it? Not real.
Interesting wordplay.
Yeah,
hey, Pete and Pete.
Yeah.
How do I find them? How do I find Pete and Pete? Because someone in the chat is mentioning them. I've never seen
Peter and Pete. Peter and Pete on YouTube.
Peter and Pete. Okay, I'll take a look at their videos, and hopefully it's something I can bring back here and we'll discuss even further. But hey, thanks for the call.
Oh, yeah. They have a PDF about water, and it's free. You go down there and download their PDF on water, and you're gonna get them. It's gonna blow you away.
I'm gonna read about the H2O hoax. Can't wait. And it's
yeah, that's what it is. He has the PDF.
Awesome. Okay. Hey, thanks for the call, Harmon. Anytime. And again, we're gonna be live every day, so feel free to call in whenever.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Covered a lot of good ground here, and I've been wanting to do some catch up on where Q is at. Where's Q? Not necessarily where's Q, but where are his followers? How are they? Have you checked on your not to change the subject, but I see too many environmentalists engaging in activism. Like, why aren't they locked down? Why aren't they locked down for Gaia? Haven't they watched Avatar yet? Avatar is another one of these movies that has all kinds of reality tie-ins. If you didn't watch Avatar 2, the whole story of Pandora under attack by capitalists from Earth and their police state, that is being repeated in Atlanta with this forest area where these forest dwellers are fighting off the police who want to build a training camp, a police brutality training camp. They've literally made Pandora a place adjacent to Atlanta. Of course, Atlantis, the tie-ins here are plentiful because Avatar, Way of Water, very Atlantean. And of course, the forest dwellers say, if you cut down the trees, Atlanta's going to flood. Don't make Gaia mad. Elephant Tusk says, everything has consciousness. Are you familiar with the singing tones? Oh, stones, singing stones. I think I've heard of that. It's an interesting idea. It's kind of part of it's intrinsic to the whole thelemic cult. Not to diminish it as new agey, but the idea that everything is sentient isn't a new idea. Even this idea that we're in a sim or holographic universe, none of these things are new. Okay, let's continue. We're waiting for the fake alien invasion, which of course will it'll make sure that you believe in the establishment worldview because the aliens come from probably Venus or Mars. If you missed the live streams and you want to get the archives, you can find us on most of the podcasting platforms. I'll be back on Spotify soon. We were cut off of more than 4,000 subscribers because of somebody falsely claiming rights on the podcast, but that should be fixed soon. You can also get the archives by going to Patreon for $1 a month. You'll get the live stream notifications and you will get archives sent to your inbox. We're on Rofkin, just Infinite Plane Radio. We have more than 2,100 subs, which is an indicator of how many people are into this level of media analysis. Because on YouTube, we can't get more than 100 without being censored. So it would make you think that we're just a small channel. But on these other platforms, and Rofkin is not a big platform, we have thousands, and we're still relatively new there. Okay, we've talked about the Super Bowl Babylon fertility rite, moon goddess worship, which ties into everything we've seen with the heart symbolism and all the red. And that's something I went through in detail on my Substack article called Super Bowl Babylon. I recommend it. What I'm saying here outright is that when you're wondering, who are the string pullers, what's with all this occultism, they're not Satanists. That's too shallow of a description. It doesn't go deep enough. I would say that the Thelemic cult, I'm talking Aleister Crowley, the Great Beast, 666, that is the secret core of the Illuminati's latest iteration of Mystery Babylon. It's the latest, it's like their latest version, and they update and they have this amalgamation of all these various archetypes. But what you saw in the Super Bowl was the Mass of the Phoenix that Crowley wrote. You saw it enacted with Rihanna. And Mass of the Phoenix, taking place in Phoenix, of course, it's a rite where you're looking at goddess worship and you're looking at what you see in the Gnostic Catholic Mass. And it has to do with body fluids. And I don't want to get too graphic. You can read about it if you care to. It's Crowley and company. But she's in red, surrounded by all the male dancers dressed in white. And this corresponds to this Gnostic Mass, and it has to do with the fertility rites having to do with the god and the goddess and the conception of the New Age, unleashing the energies of the New Age. Into Elon Musk with his satanic red armor, Elon Musk being the one to take us to Mars, because the Age of Mars is a New Age concept from Thelema. They call it the Age of Horus. And it's not about going to Mars up there. It's about changing here, making Earth Mars. Look at the Mars bases, the space gulags. Yeah, that's what's going to come down here. Now, if you look at the recent performance by Grammy Award winning Kendrick Lamar, specifically for this song, The Heart Part 5, he performed it in white, surrounded by women in red. So that's the inversion. Rihanna in red, men in white. Kendrick in white as Christ, surrounded by women in red. It's not hard to decode it. This is why the red and the white exist on the Templar flag. In Thelema, Christ and Magdalene equate to Osiris and Isis. That's why you have the Christ. Also to Beast and Babylon. That's their newest iteration. And there you have the Super Bowl arena with Rihanna's moon bump showing. This was just a ritual ceremony, a veneration of the goddess, a satanic communion ritual, you could call it that. And it's not separate from the Sam Smith and Doja Cat and even the singer of the Lift Up Your Voices, all these red dresses you've been seeing, it's all connected. This is all connected to to Damar Hamlin and the heart. All the reference to the heart troubles, even the stuff with the fake vax damages, where all these athletes are dying suddenly, and most of those are just hoaxes anyway. What you're seeing is this constant reference to the heart. Well, the heart in their occult system corresponds to the chalice, and it represents the goddess. And of course, here's Elon Musk, if you haven't seen him in this costume, which he picked up on Halloween. And I'll go a little bit into the detail on, Elon Musk and his significance and how he ties into this, because it's part of the same religion. Now, October, of course, Halloween, obvious occult holiday, but it's more than just cheap costumes. With Musk, the costume reaffirms everything that I suspected about his world stage role. Aside from being sort of a combination, I would say, of Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka, sort of eccentric, and the more level-headed Von Braun. He kind of vacillates between these two roles. But here he is with a red costume. Here he is with a ram's head. It looks like the Iron Man costume. It's called the Devil's Champion, upside down crosses, and he purchased it at a place called Abracadabras. Well, if you look up this word in the context of Aleister Crowley's religion, this is like the main word of their religion. Like it's encoded into everything they do. Their main red book adds up to the numbers. It's all gematria. I don't care to get too deep into it, but just suffice to say, this is more than just a Halloween costume. Um, Here is the composite character. I think he's Willy Wonka, also Tony Stark, and Von Braun. Of course, Von Braun wrote the book Elon, Mars: A Technical Tale, but he wrote about this character called the Elon, who would colonize Mars. Does anybody here in chat still believe that this guy's going to take you to Mars in a rocket ship? Who still believes that? Like, how did he go from, yeah, I'm going to start human civilization again out there, I'm going to found a new civilization, live out this great historic role, but first, let me go ahead and buy this gossip website where people just spew inanities at each other. Like, let me just buy Twitter. I don't know how he made that change. Now, a couple of other things. Of course, if you look at the Kabbalistic symbolism, which is the basis for Western occultism, they all use the Kabbalistic tree of life. They use the same Hebrew characters and the numbers they associate with the same body of symbols. And it's syncretic. So it's not specifically Judaic. It's syncretic. It's everything, as you will see. And, of course, it's updated, even with modern archetypes like Iron Man. Iron Man corresponds to Mars for a few reasons. Of course, Mars Kabbalistically is associated with the color red, the metal iron. It's associated with, of course, the ram, which is Aries, and Horus. Horus is the Egyptian god of Mars, and he is a falcon-headed Egyptian deity. And Musk's original set of rockets were the Falcon, the Falcon 9. Mars is red because of iron. It's the fourth planet from the sun. The number 4 in the tarot cards is the Emperor, who sits there wearing a red suit of armor next to a ram's head. In all of the images, you'll see rams for Aries and red armor on the Emperor. And Musk he has called himself the Imperator of Mars, which is sort of an emperor term. A couple other things. Here's the actual tarot card, the Emperor. You see the ram, the red armor, the number 4. It's all associated with Mars. The planet Mars, according to NASA and the pictures that they show us, it has the House of Stark logo on it. The House of Stark corresponds to Iron Man, who is Tony Stark. The House of Stark has the Iron Throne. Just another connection there. A couple of other things. We're in the age of Mars. That's why this is all happening. We could start with this too. JPL, where NASA has its origin. Really the genesis of modern rocketry and this new space religion. It began with a Thelemite warlock named Jack Parsons. And he stated pretty openly in his writings that it was his role to summon the Antichrist to declare a new age. And he was the American counterpart to Aleister Crowley. He was hanging out with L. Ron Hubbard, who was the founder of Scientology. And this makes perfect sense. A guy who creates a space age religion, a science fiction writer, hanging out with a warlock to create a religion for the masses. Well, look at our mass religion. Look at all the occultism. You can kind of see here how it's the perfect fusion, but there's one more element: movies. And this ties into Scientology and their celebrity worship. But in addition to Parsons and Hubbard, you had a movie star, Marjorie Cameron, who were at the very center of the beginning of our space age religion. But Musk is, a living embodiment, a living idol of this idea. He is you could say, vicar of Mars, just like the Pope is the vicar of Christ. And Rihanna temporarily was the embodiment of the lunar goddess. And that's an archetype I covered at length. It's tied into this cult, but it's also in so many different movies. Here's a picture of Marjorie Cameron if you haven't seen her. They called her the Wormwood Star, which is an Antichrist reference. And she was the first to report seeing a UFO. And this was in 1946, a year before the UFO crash landed in Corona Field in Roswell. No, was it 47? Yeah, 47. You have the Red Witch from Game of Thrones. You have the recent Doctor Strange, and the movie Doctor Strange has the Scarlet Witch. Well, the Scarlet Witch and the Scarlet Woman and the Red Witch from the Game of Thrones, it's all the same archetype, is what I'm pointing out here. In fact, Doctor Strange happens to look exactly like Jack Parsons. It's an intentional resemblance. They have brought this archetype, and this is something else to point out. They've been bringing this Babylon archetype. This is their goddess for the longest time. It's not new. It's a role they play. And this year it was her, but it goes back. It goes back to the beginning of Hollywood and what Hollywood's actually about. If you want to look through any of these notes, everything we discuss here, go to minds.com/Infinite Plane Society. I'm going through some comments to see if I've missed anything. Now, speaking of red and the use of this color very conspicuously, the shooter in Michigan had these bright red shoes, which may mean something. And so did Alex Stein, by the way. He has a new show on The Blaze, and we were talking about Glenn Beck's network, The Blaze. Alex Stein's first show, he's on a blimp, and it's powered by his deceased mother, who's taken over the computer as like the AI. You know, like HAL 9000. In his blimp, Alex Stein's mother is like the HAL 9000. It's an interesting show. He had Gavin McGinnis, Gavin McSmollett is what we've been calling him. The guy who faked a swatting to get clicks. The guy who once faked getting arrested. The guy who made out with a pederast at the site of a fake shooting and didn't call it fake. Anyway, the show wasn't bad, but he was wearing red shoes with no socks. I don't know what that means exactly, but there's got to be some symbolism there. I have some crazy examples of hopium. I don't want to really read them, but somebody is circulating a letter from JFK Jr. who claims that in 10 days everything will be exposed. And that is on Tuesday the 21st. So we have a week. In 1 week, masks are off. Mark your calendars. And if you're a QAnoner, update your calendar and cross out the date that it didn't happen. Okay, this has been great. I'm going to turn this back over to the 24/7. If you want to get the live streams, just go to infiniteplane.live and sign up for the newsletter. Again, we've been talking about this overlap of real and fake and how even the news media can't hide it, so they're forced to comment on it. We've been discussing the fake UFO invasion that will become real when they say it's real, because what they say, the masses believe. And if the masses believe it, we have to pretend like it's true, whether we want to or not. All right, this is going back to the 24/7. Again, I'm going to go ahead and put the links below. If you've missed any of the live streams, I just recommend going over to infiniteplane.live. You can also leave voicemails, and I will respond to those. This is Fepe Akbar. I think there was a terrorist attack yesterday I was reading about, and they were screaming Allah Akbar. Made me think of this song. Anyway, this is Fepe Akbar, because he is, or they are, by Allergic to Bullshit featuring Lean Dion.
Fuck with your deception, keep it real, that's a profession. Like the whole world is pretending, found the truth around the penguin. Get a gang on with a blessing, all the other gang are stressing. RPSC on a nesting, only real one's gonna get this. Fake ones only accept this, they can miss a message. Timbuktu got bodies, yeah, find them in our wreckage. Auto host a message. what I represent. Killing you with knowledge, yeah, the uppers getting better. Oh, you're so affected, cause we're so effective. Let go of your worries, yeah, the whole thing is a setup. We got it and we get it, offering refreshment. Level up your conscience, yeah, it's honestly the essence. This wave is uncontainable, facts are undebatable. You lanes are unrelatable, give a fuck about saving you. We could keep on playing you, you just keep complaining too. Game is unescapable, unless you're with the gang or no. Messing with the penguin, we're messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin, messing with the penguin. Coming with a vengeance, trying to make you come to your senses. Forget the general consensus, just pay attention. The rules to heads paid with good intentions. I'm clenching, my back wrenching, representing only the most superior, independent media. We got that real shit fucking encyclopedia. We're bringing an end to this mass hysteria. They wanna know why it's so serious, cause you must be delirious. If you're still believing stuff, get a grip and show some evidence for your own claims. We don't play no games, we stay relentless, exposing hopes against quick. The IPS are making an entrance, but some doors down, cause now's the time for interventions. Did I mention we're affecting so many man across the spectrum? We stand out from the crowd, we don't blend in. Steady gaining tremendous momentum, there's nothing close resembling. Check the emblem, it's a penguin, not a gremlin. Just letting you know you're on an infinite plane, it's never bending. We strike like temping, killing all fears and breaking the tension. Got another hopes army, digging deep in the trenches. Come and join in, be adventurous. Quit being so sensitive, forget the censorship, we ain't telling fibs. Messing with the penguin, we're messing with the penguin. You're messing with the penguin, we're messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin, you're messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin, fucking with the penguin.
It was like a movie scene. There was gunpowder all on the floor. You don't. It was just so real, but it felt so fake.
Your reality is fake as fuck. What I'm saying. I don't feel like silencing myself or anybody's feelings. I think the earth is flat. Sandy Hook was a hoax. Nobody died at 9/11. Megan Kelly's a dude. Ellis Jones and Bill Hicks. The space program is fake. And all of the female astronauts are dudes. All of them. They're all trans. Trannies in space. Crisis actors on the ground. Fake 9/11. Q is fake. Trump is fake. Melania is a dude. Joe Rogan's a bitch. Eddie Bravo sucks. Chemtrails are fake. If you believe in chemtrails, you're a fake enabling fool. Nobody died at Sandy Hook. Nobody died at Aurora. Nobody died at Littleton. Nobody died at 9/11. Nobody died at any of the terrorist attacks like Bataclan. Nobody died at Thousand Oaks. Nobody died in Vegas. None of those gay people died at the disco shooting in Orlando. There's no evidence for any of your religious saviors to actually exist. There are no prophecies. There is no end times prophecy. Global warming's a hoax. There's no space junk. There's no satellites. The space station is fake. And like I said earlier, your reality is fake as fuck. Party believes that those American astronauts are actually drinking Martinis. That's the only part I find remotely believable. Alright, it's been 12 minutes. Let me go ahead and delete this. I know you are listening, trolls. I know your ears are bleeding. Go ahead and call your mommies. You have a 5-minute intermission. I'll be right back. Morning. The Rock is rubber. Liver King is fake. Twitter exodus is prep for internet quarantine. And we may continue this discussion along those lines, specifically the last point about this internet quarantine that the celebrities are doing, specifically the lefties, and how it's all theater to lend credence to the idea that Elon Musk has turned Twitter into some kind of right-wing hellscape. And this is all part of a lead up to what I think is going to be a lockdown of the internet, a quarantine. You don't get on until your mind has been vaxxed. And I was talking about this today in the Discord server, this idea of mind viruses, which isn't really a science, it's more of a pseudoscience. But, notably, Musk had tweeted something a couple days ago about the woke mind virus, which was trending. Now, the mind virus term comes from a book called Virus of the Mind by Richard Brody, and he's the guy who invented the original word, which I think is also very significant in the context of memes, words, censorship, and designated mind viruses, which are just, in my view, just thought crimes. And, of course, this is very consistent with 2020 and the pandemic, which I think was just a build-up toward this, which is the infodemic, which is what they're now in the process of working out a strategy for containment. And they're getting the public behind this. And the people who are leaving Twitter, and they tell you on their way out the door they're leaving Twitter, they are essentially going into quarantine, leading the way. And I saw this coming. I saw hints of this back in 2020 when the Kardashians froze their social media accounts to make a point about hate speech. Nobody cared and they came back. But anyway, a lot of new things have happened since earlier today. Roger Stone is back with his story about demonic portals above the White House. If you recall, last, I guess, end of April, beginning of May, actually coincidentally on the 66th anniversary of the Church of Satan or something, or 56th anniversary, Roger Stone was at the White House praying over it because there was a portal, or so he thought. It actually looks like a lens flare. But, what are you going to... What's more likely? To me, it's Occam's razor. What's more likely? That there's a swirling cauldron-like demonic portal above the Biden White House that the media refused to cover? Or that it's a lens flare on the camera and Roger Stone is being paid to say this, or I would say that he's been duped, tricked by a lens flare, but the more I look at it, the more I think that he's just getting paid. I think he's on Cameo, where I think you can also find Corey Feldman, and I believe it's like $131 and you can pay Stone to say anything. Alright, I just sent out notifications. Text alerts aren't going out yet, but that's going to resume soon. I noticed we have like 92 people in Instagram, and therefore I'm making more of a point to notify people via Instagram. It's kind of a backup notification system, and also I believe the audio is picked up there. No, I'm sorry, I meant Telegram. So many of these sites. Telegram. I do use TikTok for some things, but they've already started banning me, like right away. I must be marked. But this ties into everything we're talking about today, specifically this mind virus thing, and the idea that Musk would give credence to the idea that there is such a thing. He actually said, unless it is stopped, the woke mind virus will destroy civilization, and humanity will never reach Mars. Just a reminder for anyone who might be confused as to whether or not he's on your side. Well, he is part of the same organization involved in fostering this world view that involves, global warming as something that's just accepted and it's your fault. It's he's kind of part of the program. But this was a tweet he posted back in May, the woke mind virus. And now, mind virus again was coined by Richard Brody. And I had already brought this up before that they're giving you this lexicon of epidemiology so you can start diagnosing ideas as infectious. And then you don't even want people to be in contact with it because they can catch it. They can be a bad idea super spreader with an idea they don't even believe in. They're just a carrier. It's only dangerous if you believe in it. But if you carry it, someone who might actually find it believable could therefore be radicalized. They've created basically with memes and memetics and mind viruses a parallel argument for sanitizing and censoring the internet and masking the minds of anyone who wants to get onto the commons. And this is where Twitter falls into the picture. This is center stage. And we're watching between Ye and his antics and Musk, and then of course Trump, we're kind of looking at, I think, an illustration in real time, all staged, to convince us all that the internet probably needs to be locked down because of hate. In fact, right now as we speak, I believe the Patriot Front Feds and Proud Boys, Proud Feds, I believe they are organized against drag queens, which I think is also staged by the same people. I think this is all staged, civil war, perpetual war, but it's just like, how do they all know to go to the same parties, to go protest each other? Going through some comments, Zinvala says trauma marketing. Sun Rabbits here says cruel and unusual entertainment. Joined by metaphysical logic, Salty Siren. Quadruple A, Ollie Goering says Musk is gross. Right. And, Musk marries Grimes. I'm like, is that a sick joke? Musk, Grimes, and like their baby Yucky. I mean, there's all kinds of weirdness around them. We were talking about Musk's ex-wife, Justine Musk, who wrote a book about cloned, basically cloned bodies in underground tunnels that are waiting for satanic rituals to bring forth fallen angels to inhabit them. And this is part of some apocalypse agenda, of course. But anyway, I'm just saying, what did they talk about? Like while they were dating at a picnic, where he's taking us to Mars, she's writing books about underground tunnels and incarnating angels into clones, and then he gets into tunneling underground, and now he's all about Neuralink. I mean, there's something there. Yes, we are live, joined here by Mom with Sons. My objective here is live in the mornings, doing a lot of the work of building up the IPS Institute, which I'm developing some projects that you're going to find very interesting. I have an idea for an uncensorable world stage deprogramming manual, as you'll see. And it's going to do the job, I think, of Thomas Paine's Common Sense, but in the realm of media. And I have a distribution network, everyone who carries a press pass. It's going to be epic, but we'll leave that to the side. I don't want to give our friendly competition any kind of a heads up. But my objective here is morning is serious work, discussion, metascript decoding, going over the intel that we've gathered over the previous 24 hours. And the evenings are going to be open to phones. And right now, in fact, I should just jump right into voicemails. I know a number of people are leaving voicemails. 833-311-1984. Again, easy to remember, 833-311. Of course, the day the pandemic started, and 1984 is the year that it is. Don't let them fool you and tell you it's going to be 2023. It's still 1984. And what they won't tell you is that New Year's Day is when the entire world is in sync, worshiping the god of the Thelemites, the occultists, the witches, the Masons, Sirius, the dog star. That's what the ball drop represents. You're counting down. Well, at midnight on New Year's, Sirius, the dog star, reaches its highest point in the sky for the entire year, at which point it begins to drop. Okay, let me go ahead and play a voicemail here. Again, I have a lot of these, and then we'll proceed to go through the notes and tweets.
Let us know if you need to get back to us. You have important information about the current event. You can reach our...
Okay, I can read the transcripts. Let us know if you need... Oh, get back to us. You have important information about current events. Yeah, it's true. We really do. And it's not just me, of course. It's the think tank. That's the actual focal point. Let me go ahead and continue here.
Do you think they're gone? Do you think they're gone? We are not fucking around. Be careful what you wish for, because the genie is still sucking on my mom's bottle.
Okay, I'm hoping that's a wrong number. I really am. 833-311-1984. Feel free to call in as well. Like I said, I'm going through a number of voicemails. That was just one. I don't know if he was talking to me or someone in the room. Like maybe it was a butt dial. Does that happen with an iPhone?
Yes, you may be aware that Elon Musk has just openly charged Anthony Fauci with the murder of over 1 million people by means of the gain of function research.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's Lynn. I'm glad this was brought up. I just saw this and I was watching some videos on this just now about how Elon Musk has posted some tweet. I think he offended the LGBT, MSNBC. He offended a whole group of people because he made one of these old pronoun jokes. And then, on top of it, to add insult to injury, he said, "My pronouns are prosecute Fauci." And it just seems like, okay, Musk being Musk. However, apparently, in today's political climate, even mentioning somebody in a negative light puts them at risk. Now look at this on the screen. There's a commercial playing. Just random note here. It's got black goo, Saturnian cubes, some kind of demon, I think that's venom, and satellites falling from the sky. And children playing a board game around this thing. But they could just as easily be conjuring something. Unbelievable. I'm sorry, I'm looking at a commercial for a board game, and it looks hella demonic. It's called Marvel Battle World. Okay, let me get back. Yeah, Fauci basically says that his family's being threatened, his children are being threatened and harassed by trolls. And I'm seeing the word trolls popping up quite a bit lately. Disaster trolls are what they're now calling people who go investigate and meet with suspected crisis actors, which I would never do. I'm more interested in knowing who wrote the script, who directed it. I don't care about the low-level bound and gagged. NDA, non-disclosure agreements have this. There's this wall of silence. You're just not going to ever have a whistleblower. In fact, we may get into this later, but we have a lot of reasons we've come up with why there wouldn't be any whistleblowers, nor would we expect there to be any. Restless Bear says, I went from barely hearing about Elon Musk to random people in real life bringing him up. Yeah, it's seriously exactly that. It's a PR push. They have force memed Musk's face out there. They did the same thing with Ye, with this dangerous misinformation meme. And of course, Twitter's center stage. And I mentioned this earlier when Ye was hanging out with Candace Owens, the wife of the guy who owns Parler. I was like, yeah, this is all some kind of alt-right provocation. But I mean, we're past midterms, so I'm not really quite sure where they're going with this. But it seems like the public attention span has run out on the whole Ukraine thing. I hear talk about in the next 48 hours we might get nuked. Probably Seattle. Infinite Plane Radio.
Wow, I can't believe I got on. Let me turn down. Can you give me 30 seconds to turn down the computer?
Yeah. And
I was listening.
I got your voicemail here. I was just listening to Fauci complaining about how he's been made a target of trolls, and his children as well. And I've seen memes. And
oh yeah. Well, Elon Musk. Let me turn down the sound. Give me like 30 seconds. 30 seconds, okay?
33 max.
Oh, okay.
But I want to be clear. I am not of the opinion that anybody died. I saw a lot of dancing, twerking nurses. I know a lot of people got paid. I know there's a lot of grift, a lot of loans given out to people that didn't need them. It was a major fashion statement. If you look at what 2020 was really about and how it was pushed, more or less fashion statement. Okay, it looks like I don't know if our call's being dropped here. Hopefully, we can get that call back. Let us continue. I was going through the notes. Oh, yes. Musk is introducing into mainstream the mind virus. And like, okay, a mind virus. Well, this again is something you could vaccinate against, I would imagine. And so I happened to look up Richard Brody, who again invented Word. And the cover of the book happens to be a brain with a syringe going into it. Virus of the Mind, the New Science of the Meme. Hey, what's up, caller?
Got back in. Virus of the mind. You know what I was just listening to? This is a paradigm that you will probably endorse. The notion of a stalled century. This stalled century. And maybe it's just media we're seeing this in, although some are arguing that it's also the case with the shallowness and the attenuation of technology. Because for example, if you bought an Apple device today, it's never going to work as good or last as long as the original ones from like maybe the 80s and the 90s did. It's just not as good. You know, you plug in a microphone here and it just won't work right, whereas the old telephones. You know, I still have telephones from like I have a telephone from like the 1960s that still works. It's a solid, you know, one of those chunky, it's a solid piece of hardware that probably lasts another 50 years. But the devices you get now are these lightweight plastic pieces of crap that they just break down. They're not expected to last long. Refrigerators you used to get, they would last 50, 60, they'd last forever. All you had to do was replace the Freon.
Yeah, my grandmother still has this wooden one. I think it has like an ice box on top. I think you put like ice in the top in it. Anyway, I get that for the most part, although my iPhone is indestructible. It's embarrassing how often I drop these things. In fact,
they can definitely make good technology when they want to. It's not that they don't have that capability, but it's almost like they're making a deliberate decision to kind of hold back, to either cheapen or hold back or debase or degrade, or they're giving us the also rans. They're giving us the stuff that maybe was rejected because of poor quality, but they decided to manufacture anyway because it was cheaper by the dozen or cheaper by the thousand, cheaper by economies of scale and mass production.
Well, it seems like we've been super distracted with the communication devices and social media. Meanwhile, it's 50 years since anybody's been to the moon. I'm like, has there been any development on that front?
Yeah,
None.
That sums it up. That really does sum it up perfectly. That it's been 50 years since we've been to the moon. Of course, that's you know what this makes me think of? Now, for the longest time, a lot of my life, I've been fascinated with this idea of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. I have read that what happened with Rome, at least the official narrative, and since we auto-hoax history itself, we don't know how much of this is true. We don't know if the chronology is any good.
Yes. Let me come in really quick here. Even though I may dispute whether these things are real or fake, I do my best to learn the official accounts. I think it's important to know the side that you're actually criticizing. And I do think there's a lot that you can extrapolate from the fall of Rome and how it may be kind of a theme, maybe it's a meta script that could be, the basis for what they're doing now.
Well, the term that Joseph Atwill uses is a typology. Typology it's sort of a generalization of Carl Gustav Jung's idea of the archetype. These are just these universal symbols, universal memes, universal ideas that just keep getting reworked over and over and over again. So an illiterate audience, at the time that, for example, the Gospels in the New Testament was created, the majority of the population of the Roman Empire was probably illiterate. And the people who, in particular, were being targeted, ideologically speaking, which would be the slave class and the lower classes, and especially those rebelling, those who might have been adhering to a messianic rebellion against Rome and refusal to pay taxes and the kinds of things that the Romans had to deal with especially among these troublesome Jews that were spread throughout the cities of the empire. And so if an audience of the common people, the Am Ha'aretz as they were called, who went to the synagogue on Saturdays to hear the scripture read because they were illiterate themselves, they would hear it read and then they'd hear the Targum, which is Aramaic for translation. If you look at your Hebrew text, there's the Hebrew, and then for a lot of it, right alongside of it, is what they call the Targum, which is the Aramaic translation. So even the Hebrew itself had to be read and translated into the local dialect of the common people, which was Aramaic in that region, and then Greek in the western regions of the empire. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason for the creation of something like, and when you look at the gospel narrative, Herod the Great orders the massacre of the innocents, as it's called, and the Holy Family has to flee to Egypt. And well, this would have been a familiar. It's kind of, I hate to use this expression, Mandela or McMahon effect, but that's kind of what we're getting into here. It's the echo of a memory. Just about everybody in that audience that would have heard this new version, this new expression of an old typology, an old archetype, would have grown up with the stories of Moses in the bulrushes. Pharaoh ordered the killing of the Hebrew firstborn, and so mother of Moses puts him in a basket with of straw that's coated with tar and pitch, a little boat, and sends him up the river. And is it Pharaoh's daughter who? The movie version is a little bit different than the actual.
Something you brought up here is that the target audience of the propaganda were illiterate, and one of the things I brought up lately here is that the target for the MSM propaganda are visually illiterate. They can't tell the difference between what's real and fake. And earlier today, I was talking about this TV show in the UK, the most expensive TV hoax in history, called Space Cadets, where in order to make the show succeed, they had to ensure that the people on the fake spaceship would think they were actually in orbit, and they targeted those people based on certain attributes: extroverted, a little trusting, kind of ignorant. They chose gullible people on purpose. In other words, the propaganda wouldn't have worked. The illusion wouldn't work if they had people who were too thoughtful. So one, the audience had to be dupable and duped. And then two, you had to have actors in there to reinforce the programming.
Can't they culturally condition? Can't they prep an audience? Can't they soften up a population first?
Yes,
so that it's more susceptible.
That's what I was getting at. The whole thing is, for 3 or 4 or 5 generations, if you look back at H.G. Wells, we've been inundated with this scenario of an alien UFO invasion that unifies the world. And I'm looking at, we've been softened up with our expectations, with the worldview, to make a lot of things just seem instantly believable and credible. And that's what I'm interested in seeing here. It's just, what can they pull off based on how visually illiterate they've rendered the masses?
What we are told about the so-called decline and fall of the Roman Empire, and I'm using that term the way Edward Gibbon uses it in his monumental, I have every volume of that, and I managed to plow my way through it. It's difficult because he's very wordy. But one of the things that he talks about is the reign of the Emperor Constantine as a critical turning point. That Rome had, first it had gone through a period of about a century of stability and prosperity, the so-called Pax Romana, the Roman peace, where in general there was stability and prosperity throughout the empire, which may be a misreading of it because there probably were rebellions going on. But then they entered into a period of what was called the crisis of the 3rd century, and where they went through about 80 to 100 years of instability and civil war, and finally emerged from it under this strong military leader named Diocletian. and he was the one who first divided the empire into two halves. Then he appointed a Caesar or an Augustus in both the eastern half and the western half, and he was succeeded ultimately by Constantine, who made Christianity the religion of the empire. And Constantine was the one who set up this new eastern capital at what had been a small port town on the Bosporus called Byzantium, and he renamed it Constantinople after himself. And it really became the effective. After a while, Rome, the original Rome, became sort of, the western capital was kind of moved from Rome to Milan and then to Ravenna as the so-called barbarian tribes incurred more and more. Rome itself became kind of a backwater, and the Senate and all these venerable institutions became kind of old, and they no longer had the real power. That wasn't where any of the power was anymore. But Constantinople became the focal point for the greatest city in the world at the time, for a long time, the greatest city in the world. And when Constantine planned this brand new city, it wasn't really, like I say, it already existed as a town, but he was going to turn it into this massive world historic capital of his new vision of the Roman Empire, and it's more Eastern centered. As Gibbon explains it, there was a shortage of skilled craftsmen, stonemasons, sculptors, the kinds of people you needed to build a Roman city. There was a shortage. There was a terrible shortfall. Basically, this class of people had attenuated and died off. And so what Constantine had to do was he had to loot and plunder and steal, beg, borrow, and steal statuary, blocks for building buildings and monuments from the cities all over the empire and drag that stuff to Constantinople. And as a consequence, if you go to Istanbul today and they show you the ruins of the edifices that Constantine built, and later Justinian, the Hagia Sophia and these other huge wonders of the world they were at the time, they'll tell you how, the statuary here was taken from Ephesus, and the blocks that were used to build this cathedral were brought over from Athens, or from, in other words, that the city, that the empire had to be looted in order to create this new capital on the Bosporus. And I think we're seeing that in our culture. We're seeing the borrowing, the reworking. It's like they're plowing through the attic or the basement of old scripts, like it's an old wine cellar or something, but instead it's like a library of old scripts, old Hollywood scripts. So when you turn on the television, you see the same damn game shows on in the afternoon. It's crazy, Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy or... Now, the only reason I see these things is because, I go into sushi bars and places where the screen is on. And if they have several screens, one might be showing a basketball game or another might be showing an old football game.
On the point about, you're talking about this parallel with Constantine. What do you think about this notion of, the Council of Nicaea, where they're consolidating the Bible, so they have to get rid of all the non-canonical texts, anything heretical, a purification of the world view, which is what the codified Bible would actually represent. And what I'm suggesting here is that we're actually having that happen now with the media. I'm talking about this internet lockdown, purification, getting rid of the hate speech, hate memes, mind viruses. I think what they're doing is they're going to give us a finalized version, sanitized version of the internet that is the de facto Bible for the one world church, which is the media, of course, the global media.
Yeah, I like the overall point you're making. I have to correct the detail on that.
Yeah, please do. But the overall point, yeah, exactly. I think that we're seeing some kind of a consolidation.
Is valid, but there's a detail that I have to dispute because people get it wrong. It's like a Mandela in a way. The Council of Nicaea is not where the New Testament was canonized. That happened earlier at something called the Council of Chalcedon, or maybe late around the same time at something called the Council of Chalcedon. The Council of Nicaea is where the Nicene Creed was adopted. This is the creed of all Christians, Catholics and Protestants. An assertion of belief in the Trinity. I believe in the Trinity.
This is where you would have the Apocrypha. Oh, that doesn't count. Or the part where Jesus as a toddler tames a dragon in a cave. Oh, that doesn't go in the Bible. That's where they chose the world view. And I'm looking at this parallel today.
The point
Go ahead.
point I wanted to make here bore upon the Mandela effect, because we have residue from what are called the non-Chalcedonian churches. That is to say, at the time, because remember, this canon, it was not a canon originally. There was this random collection of literature. People had different versions of it. There wasn't a standardized official version of it. And the Council of Chalcedon, together with the Council of Nicaea, said, this is it. This is the official canon, and anything else we don't officially approve. You know, it may be nice. It may be nice to include with the others, or, you know, to send as a Christmas card, or I don't know, whatever. But it's not the official Bible. We're canonizing these as the official Bible, and these we're leaving out. And you could call those apocrypha. You could call those heretical. You can call those anything you want.
Conspiracy theory, or perhaps misinformation.
Right. But we have residue. The reason why we have residue is because there are churches, which is to say continuously existing Christian churches in several areas of the world, in places like Ethiopia and in the Middle East and in Yemen, that are non-Chalcedonian Christian traditions. They are older than the Council of Chalcedon. And the Ethiopic Christian church, because remember, Ethiopia, they claim their descent. The royal family of Ethiopia has as their logo the Lion of Judah, and they claim descent directly from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. That's who they say, you know, that's the family of Haile Selassie, who was the last emperor of Ethiopia. And so originally they were Jewish, and then they were one of the earliest area. They converted to Christianity. Their elite and their royal family converted to Christianity before Constantine imposed Christianity on the entire empire, about 100 years before. For a long time, well, maybe about 80 years before, but for a long time, the Egyptian elites had adopted Christianity before Rome did. And consequently, we have their version of the Bible in very ancient languages like Gez and Amalric, and these include texts that were deliberately excluded from the Orthodox Christian Bible by the Council of Chalcedon. And this includes the Book of Enoch, which talks about the Nephilim. Well, the word in Hebrew is Nephilim.
The Watchers, the Nephilim, and the
fallen
story,
ones.
of course, yeah, the story of, they actually named the angels, like, oh, these are the ones that came down. This taught men how to gamble. This taught war. This taught makeup. And the idea behind it is all very interesting. And the theory that fallen angels are the origin of evil, that these disembodied spirits of entities that were destroyed during the flood are floating around and possessing people. Very interesting stuff. But yeah, they cut it out. They cut out the best parts. Why is that?
Well, that's the thing. When you look at how when an orthodoxy has to be imposed, so let's say we're talking about Dr. Anthony Fauci and the new COVID orthodoxy.
Wait, 1 second. Before you go, I want to point, I got this article headline here. You got to hear this. I want to hear your take on it. Because 2 years ago, the Kardashians, they said, quote, freeze. They freezed their Facebook. And they froze their Instagram. But why would they freeze their social media? And they use that word. And I'm thinking,
well, does that mean they're blocking access to it, or they're just freezing it? They're saying
they closed they just stopped using it. They went cold turkey, and they said that they quarantined. They have been leading the way on the idea, and these are of course fashion moguls, so they're demonstrating to the masses how to act, and they're saying when there's too much hate speech on the internet, you just freeze your accounts, you quarantine. And what I think what they were doing then, and I called it out, is they were preparing people for quarantining for, quote, hate speech. And that's why all these celebrities now are vacating Twitter and blaming Musk. And then you combine Musk and the influence of Ye, and you can see how they say that he's opened the floodgates to racism and anti-Semitism. You can see this narrative where they've already established the pattern here. I think they're setting up the stage for a necessary quarantine. What do you think?
A purge.
Yeah, or a purge. Exactly, both.
Right. The Germans had a term for this, and the term is, and it's really pretty old. Well, it's 19th century actually. Kulturkampf, which means culture. Well, Kampf is war or struggle, like Mein Kampf. Kulturkampf means culture war, and it's the idea that there can be no room for divergent points of view. We have to establish an orthodoxy. This is what the church did in Western Europe in the so-called, Dark Ages and Middle Ages, although they were never totally successful at it. And the fact that the violence continued, and you had things like the Crusades and everything else, where they had to actually externalize the violence, shows that they were never really totally able to completely eradicate all heresy, which is to say the vestiges of older religions and older traditions, or residue as we would call it now. But part of that is wiping out historical memory. So when you say, like, I remember what you're talking about with Kim Kardashian saying she was getting off Facebook because it was getting too toxic, or what did she say?
She said it was
She's
there's
getting
too
out
many
of social media.
yeah.
Well, Kim Kardashian, she issued a proclamation
Exactly.
to her cult followers, and apparently she has millions of cult followers around the world. I mean,
It's the only reason I focus on them. I'm like, why would I care about a Kardashian or even? I never paid much attention to West, but the thing is, these are role models for the masses, and I like to see how the masses are being pied pipered. And we can see very much, like for example, I brought up Elon Musk's ex-wife Justine Musk. Well, his other wife Grimes, in 2019, she did some kind of music video for a song called Violence where they're wearing masks. Like this is prior to 2020, and I think fashion is a huge part of all of this. That's why I think Kanye or Ye's is fascinating in this context, because what spread 2020's agenda more than fashion? Quite literally, they use fashion statements, PPE, to enforce conformity.
Mask.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the mask.
Peer
Right, we have
pressure,
that
conformity, fashion.
2019. I think it was like February of. It was early in 2019. Project Runway featured a fashion show by Indian fashion designer Kovid Kapoor. That's COVID spelled with a K. I guess Kovid spelled with a K must be a common name in India. Kovid Kapoor. And in this fashion show, you can go out and look at the pictures, and there was a YouTube video of the show, but YouTube has yanked it. You can't get to it now. They really removed that. But this was in 2019. They have one of the models wearing this kind of, I thought it was hideous, really. It was a plaid outfit, matching top and matching baggy plaid pants and a plaid face mask. And I mean, this really covered the bottom. I mean, it came right on up to the eyes. It was it was something you would rob a bank with. All perfectly colored, coordinated, and had her march down the runway. And then afterwards, the interviewer is there holding the microphone and asking the designer, well, are we expecting this to see, is this going to be a new fashion trend? What's with the mask? And how do you feel about, asking the model, how do you feel about the mask? And this was all done in early 2019. So here's what I'm getting.
What did the model say? Didn't the model say, I can't breathe?
Actually, she says something about, well, it does interfere with breathing a little bit. She says something to that effect, not using those exact words, but yes, that came up. I think the interviewer actually says, do you have trouble breathing with that? And the model says something like, yeah, she kind of blows it off. She takes it off and puts it back on, and,
Great example. Great example of predictive programming. You have the rapper Future, who was with Kanye at that event last year, Pluto or Future, who had a song called Masks Off, where they're wearing these really nice, fashionable masks that actually sold quite well a couple years later. And on the anniversary date of that song's release, earlier this year, you had that Judge Muzzle dropping the mask mandate on airlines. I'm just saying.
But people continue to wear the mask. The mask has become an affirmation of faith. It really has. And the thing is, at the time, I guess what I'm getting from this Project Runway fashion show is the gays are always on the cutting edge of this, aren't they? I mean, because of the gay the gay presence in haute couture and fashion. Obviously, they have an inordinate influence in the fashion industry, and Jews as well.
Well, fashion. I'm just saying.
I'm not going to shy away from pointing.
Fashion in general. Ye is, of course, leading the way. I mentioned
Predictive programming.
Predictive programming. But celebrities are used to lead the way into this stuff. And one of the other developments I've noticed, I think, it's the moving us, I think, into the space age, and PPE as like the environment is no longer.
I don't think they take it so seriously. I'm getting an image when I watched the original video of this fashion show before YouTube pulled it. I'm smacking my forehead with, oh my God. And I'm realizing what's going on here. These elites up there in their penthouse suites